Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him
not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? Pleasant good evening. Dissidents, welcome one and all to the DueDissidence podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss. I promise it's still me with the short hair. I know some of you don't believe me, but I promise it's the real Keaton. Thanks for being here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
Same Russ, same hair, same shirt, same everything, same bookcase. Russell's got no visual shocks in store for you this evening. Just Russell Dobbs.
Just this shocking shirt.
Indeed. We thank you guys all for being here. We have a lovely crowd in here to start the evening, over 200 strong. Thank you so much. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Can we get to 9,000 subscribers by the end of this stream? That shouldn't be too tall an order, should it? We are at 8.99 coming in. Let's see if we can make that happen. Folks. We are at 89.93. We could probably get there right now if just 7 of you who are not subscribed would hit that button. So we thank you all for being here very much. We're going to do this show a little bit out of order tonight for good reason. We have a very special guest who is waiting in the wings, who we're going to admit in just a second. I'm not talking about Norman Finkelstein. Some of you guys were under the impression Norman was rescheduled for tonight. I thought we had announced this properly last time.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, Norman's going to be on here on the 16th. That is this Tuesday. So 2 nights. You have a special show, a special stream dedicated just to the Norman Finkelstein interview. So that will be coming up. But
we're calling it 3 Jews Bitch About Marx.
Yeah, right. Exactly. 3 generations
over pastry
of Norman Finkelstein. Right. Over nosh.
Exactly.
All righty, everybody. So without further ado, though, like I said, we are doing this show a little bit out of order because we do have a special guest. Those of you who have been watching this show for a while know who he is. Those who have not been watching this show for a while might not, but you should. It's very likely you read his article about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., which came out just a few days ago. He is a poet, an author, and a wonderful writer, and a longtime friend of our show, here to make his case for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., our great pal, Anis Shivani. Anis, great to see you again, my friend.
Thanks. It's just great to be on again. Yeah, great to see you guys.
You are the OG dissidents.
The OG dissident, yes. The longest friend of the show.
Right. No,
Anis was coming on here when we had like 6 subscribers. 2 of them were our cats.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And here he is in front of the big crowd under the bright lights down there in Houston, Texas. But you wrote an article that was published in Counterpunch entitled, Should the Left Give RFK Jr. a Chance? And you got a very important retweet on that article. I would say the most important retweet you could possibly get. Right. It was, of course, from RFK himself. Interesting analysis of my candidacy from a left perspective. The fact that my candidacy is getting positive attention from both right and left demonstrates the possibility of broad-based populism and national reconciliation. Kennedy 24. I screenshotted that tweet at 12:52 p.m. this afternoon. By then, it had gotten almost 750,000 views, and so a lot of people are reading this piece of yours. We've made our position on RFK's candidacy quite clear. I am hung up on the fact that he is running as a Democrat, as is Russell, as are many in our audience, but many in our audience do not share our hang-up. And despite that hang-up, I thought your piece was, as always, I mean, everything you do is extremely well-written and well-argued, and I didn't find myself really disagreeing with anything in there. Despite my reservations about RFK on a whole, for reasons we'll get into. But before I start yapping about my point of view, which our audience is surely sick of by now, I want to give you the floor, Anis, to sort of summarize the article a bit and lay out your case for why the left should be perhaps more excited than we are about RFK Jr.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the great introduction. I really appreciate your reading my article so carefully, and despite your own reservation, giving it a fair reading. So I really appreciate that.
Of course.
And
I read everything you do. You know that.
Thanks. Yeah. So I was really, really excited when I heard his campaign declaration speech, which he conducted for 2 hours extemporaneously. For the first hour or so, he talked about mostly his environmental record, and I think that was to introduce himself to a nationwide audience, many of whom may not know who he is. Maybe they know the family name. Okay, but he's almost 70 years old. He's 69, 70. What has he been doing all his life? And so he talked about his work on the Hudson River, the river cleanup, fighting polluters like Monsanto and other, bad polluters. And he talked about how difficult a job that was to fight the environmental degradation because of regulatory capture. The agencies of government all being captured by the very entities they are supposed to regulate and monitor and control. And he was presenting himself as someone in a very good position to step in and bring the process back into balance in a very New Deal sort of way. Now, that's an interesting way to position yourself, to introduce yourself to a national audience right at the start. And he went quite a bit into the weeds for an hour plus before he got into some other issues, like some of the broader economic justice issues and the war in Ukraine and so on. Before that, it was just about the environment, how he personally felt about this, what it meant to him spiritually. And it could have come from an old line conservative, let's say an Arizona Republican or whatever, concerned about the water and, things like that, or a Theodore Roosevelt type of progressive. He's not positioning himself as a radical or of any kind, like I'm this socialist, democratic socialist, whatever, which the kind of rhetoric that we on the left have gotten used to hearing when somebody rises as an opponent of the orthodoxy. So it's very interesting, and he held people's attention for more than an hour as he went into quite a bit of detail about those regulatory fights and where he succeeded and where he failed because of how strong, how difficult it is to fight these forces. Then he went into the broader issues, but he still stayed very much in a sort of policy realm, and interestingly managed to hold certainly my attention. And you can see the crowd and what I've heard from other people since then, from many people, people, for example, who responded to the article that I wrote in favor of his candidacy, people on Twitter and so on. Many people have said, wow, that was just an epic introduction speech, and it still lingers in memory, 3 or 4 weeks later. So it's amazing that he could get into the policy weeds and do it in such a way to hold your attention, which I'm mentioning because I think there is a force within liberalism that is not completely spent yet. It can still be revived. It can still be brought back to life. It's dead under the Democratic Party and Clinton, Obama, Biden, that sort of, regime that we've had. It is neoliberalism that we are talking about, right? It is not liberalism. So the Democratic Party became the party of neoliberalism. And Robert Kennedy, in contrast to, for example, Bernie, whom I don't know if you guys ever did, I never heard him use the word neoliberalism in my life. I mean, I've never heard him use that vocabulary, that language. He talks about millionaires and billionaires, right? Okay, so you are personalizing it and you're making it sound as if these millionaires and billionaires are the problem, but the system is the problem. And what I've heard from Kennedy, and since then, after that campaign's introductory speech, I went and looked at a whole bunch of his podcasts in the alternative media sphere with all kinds of people. There was one with Theo Vaughn. I mean, he has his own Spotify podcast, which I didn't know about, but there's a whole range of issues he discusses. He brings on interesting guests. And it's not just the few issues that you think he might be associated with that he talks about. He talks about everything, right? So he's a highly intelligent, incredibly intelligent person. And for me, I have not heard anybody else make a case for reviving liberalism. He's not saying he doesn't say that I'm a socialist or communist or some kind of radical, right? He is explicitly appealing to conservatives, disaffected conservatives, not just the never Trumpers, but Republicans, independents, people in the middle, all kinds of moderate people, even all kinds of radical people who may have questions about the military-industrial complex, about the national security state, about what he calls the biomedical, biosecurity establishment. These are all very systemic forces, and he is aiming to contest those horrible, destructive forces from within a liberal perspective. And it's very hard to make a case for that. I realize that because you've had 30 years of explicit neoliberalism. Actually, it goes back to Reagan and even the days of Carter, if you really want to be precise about it. But
Carter was really the first.
Carter was the first person who started. So we're talking about 40 plus years of corruption. And here's somebody, as I mentioned in the article, who sounds like he came from 1968. I mean, a lot of his rhetoric. I mean, it's interesting to hear some of RFK Sr.'s speeches shortly before his assassination on race, on class, on the national division that was splintering the country at the time of Vietnam, plus the race riots and the racial turbulence as LBJ's Great Society and the war on poverty started to falter, mostly under the weight of Vietnam, right? So if you listen to RFK speeches from that era, and then you listen to RFK Jr. and you go, my God, the rhetoric, the presumptions, the audience that he's addressing sounds like this is 1968. And 1968, as I mentioned in the article, to me has always seemed like you can say that there were many turning points. You could even make the case. You could go back a little earlier to 1963 and pinpoint JFK's assassination, or 1945, with the atomic bomb, right, as these turning points. But even between 1963 and 1968, LBJ was doing great work, at least domestically, with the Great Society. So maybe it was 1968 when finally the Great Society just ran out of steam. And then you had Nixon and this retrenchment that has been going on now for 55 years. So it was fascinating to me that this is somebody who sounds like he comes from that era. And that seems to me very symbolically powerful, because it's as if he's saying, look, we have really gone off the rails these 55 years. He's not going back to some of the insurgents that we've had in recent times who may pinpoint the rupture or the dislocation point more in the near past, right? Like we went wrong in, I don't know, after 9/11 or 2008-9, the Great Recession, for example, right? He's not doing that, or even 1991-92 with Clinton and neoliberalism. He's going way back to 1968, and he recognizes what happened with Nixon, with George Wallace, and those people are still out there. He has a deep recognition, I think, of the Trump voters. Trump voters, some of whom might have ended up being Bernie voters. He's not going to dismiss them. He's not going to, mock them as deplorables. He is explicitly going to appeal to them as well as disaffected liberals. And I think the strength of his candidacy for me is that he strongly believes that the Democratic Party has actually left liberalism. Now, if you are a radical, you could be a Marxist, communist, and you could say, well, you know what? I just don't buy liberalism. That's the liberalism itself is a problem. And you could say, well, what about FDR liberalism or LBJ liberalism or Teddy Roosevelt? He was sort of a liberal, even though he wasn't really, And he could say, well, you know what? I just don't believe that. I'm a Marxist. I believe that workers should have total control over, the means of production, etc. That's different. You can make that argument, but that's not where he is. He's not making that sort of argument. And he believes you can revive liberalism in both the philosophical sense and the political administrative sense. So getting the country back from these regulatory agencies that are totally out of control. And, you can talk about the medical establishment and the agencies that are part of that, right? That's part of that. That's not all of it. So the people who mock him, will just pinpoint that part of it, like his criticism of, let's say, the CDC or the NIH or whatever. But hey, he's talking about the whole range of agencies, not the least of which is the CIA. And since his declaration speech, he's been very outspoken on the CIA and the JFK and RFK assassinations, as I think anybody who researches those assassinations of the 60s, as I have very deeply, I don't know what other conclusion you could come to, right? So he is talking about, when he talks about these agencies, don't focus on just that, the current thing that he's most associated with, but let's talk about the CIA and the NSA. And he's very explicit on Snowden and Assange and all the dissenters, and we should not be punishing people. A couple of things I mentioned in the article, I think I said that censorship. So in order for there to be a real liberalism, you cannot have censorship. This is absolutely foundational. You've got to have freedom of speech, of all kinds of speech that you hate, right? And we, in 2023, it really, I think, as somebody operating in the liberal left media spheres for about 25 years now, I think 2015 was sort of a turning point, 2015, 16, and I think especially after they thought, oh my God, maybe we helped put Trump in power, so we just got to go the censorship route. The liberal media did.
Right, sure, yeah.
And the other turning point was 2020 with the pandemic, and they were like, oh, you know what? We just can't talk about this stuff. We'll leave it to the experts, and that's fine. So that's been going on for 3 years. And I think the thing that really gets conservatives who are not necessarily who may even be Trump supporters, but when he talks about censorship and freedom of speech, he gets everyone. I mean, he has a really broad appeal because people as a whole do not believe in censorship in this country. Even today, the woke people do, the establishment, the liberal media, the people who don't want to talk about this stuff, or the Ukraine war. No discussion about Ukraine war. Even Ukraine war, that's if you talk about that, unlike the Iraq war 20 years ago, right? This is disinformation. You're a Russian agent. You could be banned from Twitter or social media or whatever. That's a war that we are fighting. Well, not officially fighting, but it's a proxy war, right? So censorship is one thing where he's really strong. And I was very upset with recent progressive campaigns. And you can go back to, it also reminded me of Howard Dean in some interesting ways, because Howard Dean, in the wake of 9/11 and the Patriot Act and the illegal stuff that they were doing, justified by the Office of Legal Counsel, the OLC, with the torture memos and rendition and black sites and so on. And RFK mentions that always. I mean, he's very cognizant of the abuses that have happened under the CIA and the national security state in the last 20 years. And he wants no part of that. So Howard Dean in 2004, if you remember, he almost used the same vocabulary. That was another person, not a democratic socialist or socialist, trying to revive liberalism, although, in the end, it didn't work, for different reasons. But Howard Dean's language
he went off and got paid.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Howard Dean became the DNC chair, and then he became,
pharmaceutical lobbyist.
Right. So, but he would say, I want my country back. I don't know if you remember that in 2004. I want my country back. And by that, he meant the Bill of Rights, the scream that they got him for, right? RFK is not going to scream. I hope not. But when he said, I want my country back, he was talking about the Bill of Rights, and the Second Amendment, Eighth Amendment, etc. Because this was, nobody talks about it these days among the post-millennials. We don't talk about the Bill of Rights anymore, but this was still very much a live issue, maybe the biggest issue in 2002, 3, 4. And he was saying, we've lost the Bill of Rights. The other thing that I mentioned in that article was about empire. And it always seemed to me not just hypocritical, but logically completely a non-starter when in recent years you've had people asking for Medicare for all, free higher education, the Green New Deal, etc. And you want to say nothing about empire forever
Is it okay if I
wars.
stop you 1 second? Because I actually want to pull up that part of the article, because I've thought, as someone who's spoken to you about this a lot, that part really jumped out, because, you would always talk about all these social democratic reform movements, whether they're centered around candidacies like Bernie, or whether they're just, individual, single issue movements like Medicare for All or Fight for 15. You've always had, I think, a very, very intelligent critique that they are not addressing the backdrop in front of where this, or the backdrop behind, I should say, where this struggle is taking place, and that is the backdrop of empire. So this is from your article. I'm just going to read the first paragraph here. I was always bothered by the fact that recent national progressive campaigns have left the biggest elephant in the room, namely empire, mostly out of the discussion. It always seemed ridiculous to me to imagine that we could attain Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, free higher education, or whatever other welfare prescriptions of the moment were, while leaving the machinery of empire alone. It never computed to me that you can have surveillance, censorship, a uniparty system agreed on fighting new forever wars. In short, the whole apparatus of empire struggling to keep up with emerging challengers and have the domestic goodies at the same time. Sorry to cut you off, but I thought that passage was worth reading.
Thanks a lot for reading that. So I think this is, I'm just going to finish up. I think that's also where he can have a lot of independents, disaffected, real liberals within the Democratic Party, outside the Democratic Party. They may have stopped voting. He'll appeal to a lot of conservatives too, because you may have noticed that this anti-war sentiment is mostly today on the conservative side, and not just the Trumpers. There are actual, like, regular conservatives questioning war, Ukraine, empire. Now you could say, well, if their guy was fighting the war, maybe they would be for it. But I think it's more than that. I think there's a recognition that we cannot be fighting these kinds of wars. Sanctioning Russia hasn't worked. It's not going to work. It's just going to accelerate the process of de-dollarization and decoupling from China. And it's going to leave us in much worse shape when this is all over. If we keep going this path and try to fight these impossible wars that we can't possibly win, and China is going to be next, we're going to be ending up in a very sad, sorry state, as a broken empire by the end of this decade. And I think that there are enough people out there, left, right, center, who recognize that, where he is making, RFK is making sense to them, because he's putting those two things at the center. And, it's interesting. The one way to say those two things is, and I always give Trump credit for that. I mean, no matter how you may feel about the rest of his politics, he says the deep state and fake news. So what is the deep state? The deep state is the military-industrial complex, right? It's the thing
and the surveillance state,
right. The surveillance states, and now the biomedical establishment has become part of that much more so than it was in the past. And then fake news. What is that? Except censorship. I mean, all the stuff coming out of the established organs, the Times, whatever. It's just all CNN. It's all fake news, and it's fascinating that they are quote unquote fact-checking people. I mean, what they did to Trump at that town hall, fact check. Since when did a reporter become the debater? It was supposed to be a town hall, right? And the whole idea, I'm opposed to that. What is a fact in this postmodern world? The facts are just what the liberal establishment believes and is forcing down people's throats. It could be anything. For example, forget about the COVID stuff. It was about Russia, Ukraine. And so the fact checker in that town hall, she's confronting him as if this is a fact. You're fighting a war, Russia, Ukraine, the US, NATO, all that. How can there be indisputable facts in that war, right? And when she said to me, like, oh, are you for winning or losing? And he was brilliant. He was amazing. And RFK says that too. And he says, like, I'll end the war immediately. Trump says the same thing. And in fact, it wouldn't even come to their inauguration, because as soon as Biden left, if that happened, there would just be a reconciliation and peace, because without our support and money and arms, how are they going to fight the war, right? So it is true, it would end immediately. But now he's being confronted as the Russia-Ukraine war is a fact that you must believe. Otherwise, they have to warn their viewers. We're going to censor him. There is misinformation, and we will deplatform you. They can't deplatform him now because he's beating the crap out of DeSantis, right? So, so this was very important. The part about empire is that this is just a contradiction in terms, and he's placed that for the first time in my life, I mean, I can look back at, Dennis Kucinich, right, in the mid 2000s when he was saying, well, what was he used to say about, peace? I'm for the party of peace, whatever. I can't remember his words,
Yeah, I forget exactly. But no, he was one of the very, very few. I mean, you can count on one hand, one of the very
literally
few
one
Democrats who were willing to speak out against the Iraq war.
Speak out against, right? And say, look, we can't be doing this. We can't be fighting these wars. We can't have anything at home unless we stop these wars. But RFK is going way farther than anybody. Now, here's the thing. You can call him a liberal. You can call him a Democrat, whatever you want to call him. But look at the substance of his critique. It's going like on just this one issue of empire. It is going as far as you can possibly take it. I mean, as a radical, somebody, I wouldn't call myself a liberal, right? But I mean, there's not much I can add to his critique of the national security state, what we are doing as an empire around the country, how we're messing up these countries, the CIA, coup d'etats, the whole horrible history of the Cold War, what we've done since 9/11, what we're still doing, the 800 military bases, the Pentagon budget. What more could he say that he's already saying that I could add to it? I mean, there's not much, right?
No, I think that's a really fair point. And I just want to bring up one more thing before we get into some of our reservations about RFK, and then I'll toss to Russell because I know he's ready to get into that, as am I. But one thing that jumped out at both Russell and myself when we were watching that speech, and I believe Russell actually mentioned this when we were doing the segment on his launch, and he also mentioned it, I think, Anis, when you were on the air with us, about how that older generation of political leaders like RFK's uncle, right? But even beyond that, even guys who didn't necessarily like all that much, they just spoke so much more intelligently and with so much more depth and mastery of language than the politicians of the day, where he's even a guy like Obama, who was considered a great orator. He was a great orator the way like The Avengers was a great movie. Yeah, it's a great production, but there's not much underneath it, right? But one of the phrases that RFK used when talking about the Russia-Ukraine war, I forget the exact phrase, but he mentioned the flower of Ukrainian youth, right? Just that phrase jumped out at me. It's like, that's something his uncle might have said, right? His uncle may have turned a phrase like that, and Russell even pointed that out. And so you're right here in the piece. I doubt that we have heard such eloquence and intelligence since the great charismatic leaders of the 60s, his uncle being one of them, obviously. Our latter-day politicians having spoken mostly in a narrow-casting language of transactionalism. I thought that was a really, really great sentence there. So do you want to explain kind of what you mean by that and how just rhetorically he is this breath of fresh air, not in the sense that he's something new, but that he's something that like represents something too old for many of us to remember, obviously before I was even born, and Russell for that matter.
Right, we hardly remember
it's not
that
often
language.
We get to talk about something that was before Russell's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we talk about the Model T.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Obama, but Clinton too, who was supposed to be the great, and Reagan as the great communicator. Reagan was actually called the great communicator, but among the Democrats, among liberals, it was supposed to be Clinton. Now, Obama was all teleprompter, and I never found his rhetoric because it was just literally these bullshit establishment words, completely meaningless about whatever, these speeches, right? Which the national media.
All right, Anis, do you remember this? I don't want to. I'm not gonna take the mic from you. But do you remember when David Brinkley got caught on a hot mic at the Democratic convention?
Doesn't have an X bone in his body. Remember that one?
Well, he was saying that
was the end of Brinkley.
That Bill Clinton was completely boring.
He said
he had no original ideas.
He said in 1996, and I remember watching that because that was
at the convention. Yeah.
At the convention with Bob Dole, I'll say whatever you want me to say. What do you want me to say, right? And Brinkley said that Bill Clinton did not have an interesting bone in his body. And I haven't thought about that in years and years.
He's got one pretty interesting bone. I'll give him that.
That is true.
See, I was going to say it was before Monica.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he does. But now after RFK, and you said such a breath of fresh air and just the eloquence, and he's not speaking from a teleprompter. He does not. I mean, he can go for hours and hours, and I mean, he's also a podcaster, right? So I mean, literally, and he doesn't falter. And it doesn't just have to be pretty nice words or eloquence in that sense. What I was saying is that Obama's rhetoric was completely empty. I mean, it was just zero. There's no meaning behind those words. It's as vapid as Sarah Palin or Rachel Maddow was in different ways. I mean, it's
well, do you remember also, like, this is something that's forgotten now because we've become accustomed to it. Do you remember when Reagan came in? Really, he's the one who started that.
Who started this thing?
And it was a point of a lot of discussion that Reagan was such a rhetorical departure into television,
away
from this tradition of rhetoric.
Unlike even Carter.
Presidents
Unlike
before
even
him.
Carter.
Even Carter
Nixon
gave a speech about the national malaise. It was still very much in that tradition of oratory, of you're presenting a conceit and a philosophical idea, and you're building your speech
and
around
you develop
it. Reagan comes out and starts basically stealing samples off Springsteen and Michael J. Fox. Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Make my day. Right? Go ahead, make my day. You ain't seen nothing yet, or whatever.
You can hear it in the songs of a young man named Bruce Springsteen. Like no president had talked that way before. That's why when Nixon went on laughing, it was a big deal because presidents almost didn't deign to recognize that pop culture existed. Right. And Reagan built his speeches around pop culture.
Right. Well, let me just finish by saying, when you asked about the narrow casting language of transactionalism. Yeah. So when we talk about Clinton as the great communicator of the last 30 years in the Democratic Party, well, really, is that true? And I've heard enough of Clinton. I mean, it was the language of triangulation. Triangulation, taking these little ideas, very little rhetoric, appealing to your immediate sense of gratification. He came to tell you to feel good about yourselves in these very little ways, and he was going to do little things, and there was no vision either in foreign policy that he presented. Now, in fact, behind the scenes, they were trying to re-engineer the whole world, the bureaucrats at state and Pentagon and so on, and that's when neoliberalism, more so than even under Reagan, really took off, and they, under the IMF and World Bank and so on, they re-engineered the whole world economic system. But as far as his speaking style and what he was telling the American people was very little things in very little, sort of dismissible ways, very forgettable ways. You even remember anything one thing you remember is the era of big government is over. I remember that, right? Or, welfare, mend it, not end it. That's about it, right? So, I mean, that's transactionalism.
Yep.
If you think about that, welfare, mend it, not end it, you think about what constituency is he appealing to? What is he really doing? Is there really some racism?
It's triangulation. It's triangulation.
Yeah, it's triangulation, right?
It's trying to have it both ways.
Era of big government is over, which he only says at the 1995 State of the Union speech after Gingrich's contract with America, and that contract was the essence of transactionalism. Really, it was like appealing to the suburban, exurban, white middle class people and saying, "Look, you know what? You're not gonna pay. You don't have to make any sacrifices, and you're just gonna get stuff back that you thought you were gonna lose after the Cold War. No. You'll be fine, and now we're gonna go this way, and there will be no real sacrifice." So, and Clinton is latching on to that. He's supposed to be the great communicator of the liberals for the last 30 years, elevated to this, this pantheon of, so, and then you listen to RFK, he's literally just speaking like, what we want to hear, the truth, the reality. He could be Jimmy Dore. And if Jimmy Dore had that kind of, education and background and experience, I'm talking about in terms of getting to the heart of the matter, the truth, without the bullshit, right? And he's saying, you know what? That's how it really is. And you don't need to have these fancy words. And yet it still sounds beautiful and to me very uplifting because you go like, yeah, this is just put really nicely. And he's, it's not just words. So that's somehow we've gotten away from we've started believing, and I don't know, people made a lot of that, like the MSNBC types about Obama, and they would say like, oh, this is poetry. This is poetry. Remember all that, right? And they would say, well, his poetry. Really?
Well, I mean, these people raved about Biden's inauguration speech, which was incoherent. So you can't really go by that.
I don't think I listened to that. Yeah.
They did. That was one of the best. I don't know if he could have done any better.
Right? Yeah.
It was freedom.
I mean,
the video
with things like this, it's part of an overall cultural change,
right?
Like there's a meme a lot of the people who cover pop culture like to use of a guy saying, don't ask questions, consume product, and get excited for next product.
The product to consume now is freedom, according to that. I have no idea about the reaction, the media reaction to what that 6 a.m. 3-minute bullshit video where he says freedom. Oh my God, he didn't even have a rally. He didn't have people,
that was the
humans. He just did this and that's it. And now he's going to ask people, big donors, for money. And so I bet, I have no idea, but I bet Joe Scarborough and whatever, they'll be like, wow, that was eloquent.
Of course. They eat
but
that
he literally, and what was amazing to that, and by the way, in the follow-up essay to the RFK piece that I wrote today, which kind of addresses your reservations, and which I mentioned to you in the pre-discussion before the show, is that when Biden said freedom, everything that was on the screen and the events that were happening was anti-freedom, which is the other incredible. Like literally talk about censorship or the Ukraine war or whatever bullshit, and you say the word freedom, and it's actually the opposite of freedom. So you cannot get more Orwellian than that. But I bet if he just stands up and says the word freedom, people will say, "Oh, that's eloquent." Barely able to breathe out the word. Can you imagine him on the stage with RFK or Trump?
Well, I could, but that's all I'm going to get to do is imagine it. And that brings us into the second part of the conversation.
There you go. Wow, what a great segue.
He's a master of his craft.
Yeah,
what was that?
I'm starting to get the hang of it after 4 years.
Communications degree. We don't need no stinking communications degrees.
That was very neatly done because you connected like multiple threads in this little sentence.
Thank you. I appreciate
brilliant,
it.
Man.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Let's get into the second part of this because Russell and I are on the record saying we just can't go there if he's running as a Democrat. And I know what my main issue with this is. My main issue is that despite me agreeing with just about all of what you said, and I am more radical, I think liberalism itself is always doomed to fail because it will always cede ground to capitalism because liberalism allows capital too much room to work, right? I mean, if you allow capital that much room to grow and expand, eventually it will swallow whatever system allows it to expand that much. So, but that's me. And I know that's kind of more or less, without putting words in your mouth, that's kind of you also.
Absolutely.
But what I will say is my main critique is not with much of what RFK says or much of what you said. It's when you're running inside the Democratic Party, the issue is not what you say so much as it is who you're saying it to. To whom is he making this case? Like this article that you wrote, making your case for RFK. Brilliant article. Absolutely fantastic article. I really, I'm not just saying that because I'm your pal. I think it's really one of your best pieces that you put out in a long time. But who's going to read that depends on who's going to win the Democratic primary. The people who vote in the Democratic primary would read that article and their eyes would glaze over. They wouldn't have any idea what you're talking about. You wrote Macbeth and you put it up in a theater where people paid to see Guys and Dolls. As we all know, the Democratic Party electorate are the dumbest people in the country. And so you could make a case like that to them. If the people who dominate the electoral space, if the people who dominate the forum in which you have to compete are just too stupid, quite frankly, to respond to any of that, then you have no chance. And then the question becomes, what happens after you lose? Do you fall in line, as we suspect he will, or do you actually challenge the system in a meaningful way, which is to guarantee you'll be on the ballot in November? In this case, since he's starting as a Democrat, that would have to come in the form of a dirty break where he runs as an independent or on a third-party line in November. I'm not confident he'll do either of those things, which is my main reservation about his campaign. But Russell, do you want to add to that a bit?
All right. So, the Kennedys are an interesting case in building on what Keaton's talking about with liberalism not working. The Kennedys came up out of these very corrupt urban political machines where, in New York, it was Tammany Hall. In Boston, they had their own version of that. Where the Irish rose up as the political class in these cities that had a lot of immigrants because they were the only ones who arrived in America speaking English. So all the immigrants got behind them as kind of the spokespeople for the interests of the poor and struggling urban classes. The Kennedys were kind of the apotheosis of that. And in a lot of respects, it's very much like what you see in empires, right? Where you have Genghis Khan establishes it, and there's a vigor in the first generation or two after that, because you have a next generation, next two generations that's close enough to the earth, close enough to the gritty realities that brought them to power, but they have the advantages of education and knowledge of governance that the founder of the line didn't have. And very often that leads to, the best of the line in this period. So the Kennedys are really the full flowering of that working class Tammany Hall effort to overthrow the Republican Protestants and their class and the class that they represented. So you get to John, you get to Robert, to some extent Teddy, just don't get in a car with them. And you have the full flowering of that effort. So RFK is an echo of that. That's what you hear in his rhetoric. He's the last of his line, not literally, but figuratively. He's the last. He's the end of that. And that's part of why it's so moving, particularly if you have not had your brain rotted by technology and you're able to follow language that's that complex over that long a speech. You're going to really appreciate it. I would question whether if he got anywhere that would even appeal to most people, if they'd even be able to follow what he's talking
especially about. Democratic voters, especially the people who listen to Politics Girl and the Harry Sisson, right?
Yeah,
it is important.
It is right. Like would they even be able to sit in that stew?
Right, exactly.
That's a question in and of itself. But setting all of that aside, look, you're sitting here, and essentially what I'm hearing is you're explaining to me exactly why somebody is a great poker player, and you're telling me, and that's why you should stake them, even though they're about to walk into a casino that we know is rigged. We know the casino, so I don't care what their poker game is like. What are we even talking about here? Who cares? Who cares if you agree? You could agree with him all day. He's playing in a rigged game. Now, if he were running as an independent, different story. And just to head this off, we've had a lot of people when we get into this say, nobody's saying to put up money or time. Well, that's a very peculiar presidential campaign. Maybe you're personally not at, but certainly he's going to.
He's going to need something,
or for the Marianne people, she's going to. People who are running are going to ask. So yeah, hey, in the very unlikely event that RFK is on your ballot, you want to go down and make a little statement? Go ahead. Go ahead. What we're talking about is, do we get behind this campaign? Not as long as he's running as a Democrat. You got to be a special kind of stupid to get involved in a Democratic primary when the DNC literally walked into court and said we could pick the candidate in a back room. We have no legal obligation to run a fair primary. They will let RFK be the nominee like they're going to let Bernie Sanders be the nominee. They will never let they would sooner let Bernie Sanders be the nominee.
Of course, no question about it.
They will never. They got their super delegates in the worst case scenario because of what Keaton has often pointed out about Democratic voters. They're not going to need that.
Right.
And if you looked at the polls this week, I know a lot of people made a lot out of it. Hey, he's 33%, I think it was 34%.
I think it was 35,
in a general poll, which again begs the question. Okay, why is he not running as an independent? He's running as an independent. This is a whole different conversation. It's a whole different, we're 100% behind it if he's running as an independent, but not as a Democrat. And aside from that, my good friend Joe Biden, where have we heard that? That was what Bernie said before he fucked us. Okay, he is telegraphing to you right there, no dirty break. And this ends with me telling you, in spite of everything I said about the empire and all that, you have to vote for Joe Biden because in the end, I'm like a, fifth generation Democrat. I'm basically Democratic royalty. I'm not going to break from the Democratic Party. I'll piss off my family with my stance on schmaxine, but I'm not going to go so far as to completely burn my bridges with all of my relatives and make it impossible to attend Kennedy family parties forever after. This ends with him telling you to vote for Joe Biden, and he made that very clear. And frankly, on a moral level, this guy's so moral. He's so moral. Why are you good friends with the author of mass incarceration? Why do you refer to somebody who opened, this is not 50 years ago, who opened his campaign in 2019 talking about how well he worked with those segregationists and how they never called him boy. They always called him son. What the fuck did that mean? That's how he opened his campaign. Not 50 years ago. This is 4 years ago. He's still talking very fondly about the work he did with those segregationists. And it's not even as if you could say, well, you know what they did? They put up affordable housing together. So you could kind of see what he means. What did he do with them? He created the carceral state as we know it. That's the work that they were able to do together in a bipartisan spirit that he's still nostalgically looking back on, so much so that God knows how many electric shocks they had to give him to get him to stop saying racist things. He hasn't said anything in a while. I think the last one was, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. That was the last big one. But clearly that's where his head's at. You know, like it seems like they locked him in a room and just literally shocked him for a month until he stopped saying shit like that. So why are you describing him as your friend? You're so moral. Why is that your friend? Why don't you open your campaign by saying Joe Biden has arguably done more harm to black and brown people than any living politician, and he should be in prison, one of the prisons that he threw 2 generations of mostly black men into. That's where he belongs, not the White House. I'll tell you, man, if he opened with that, I might think about backing him even as a Democrat. The fact that he won't do that tells you this is all a fucking game. This is all a game, and anyone who really gets invested in it is going to be taken for another ride.
All right, let me just add one more thing to that, and then I'm going to toss to Anis because I know you have an answer to this. No, it's okay. As I know Anis has an answer, but I just want to add one more thing. When it comes to this question of empire, which I think RFK speaks very well on, he speaks better on it than any candidate we've supported in our lifetime has spoken on that. Even Bernie didn't talk about it, including Bernie, way, right? Okay, so if you are serious about the necessity for reeling in the just obscene excesses of this empire, on those grounds, Trump is the candidate you should back over Biden if that's your number one issue, right? I mean, how do you turn around and say, well, no, vote for Biden, who's getting us into not just World War III, but it looks like World Wars III and IV, right? If he gets 2 terms. Go vote for him against the guy who promises to end the Ukraine war within 24 hours of taking office again, right? So anyway, that's what I would add to that. But go ahead, because I know you have an answer, Anis, so I want to give you the floor again.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point, and all very good points. I will just ask, I've got like about 10 different lines of response to what you guys said. I'll just ask Russell, like, if he denounces his good friend Biden, doesn't it logically lead to him needing to denounce Democratic Party voters as well? Because they support him, they love him, and as Keaton, as you said, they're the dumbest voters in the world. So shouldn't he, according to your logic, he should start his campaign by saying, "Well, fuck you, voters. You're dumb as hell."
No, he should start the campaign by saying, "Fuck you, Democratic voters. I'm running as an independent." Yes, absolutely.
That's it.
Yes.
That's
okay.
it.
Does Biden have support among independents too?
Maybe a little bit, but no, he's actually losing independents to Trump by
You
quite a
can't
bit.
win elections unless you have a large part of the independents too, right?
Well, I think he could stitch together. Look, I think he could stitch together a coalition. He's one of the very few people who I actually think could win as an independent because of that Kennedy name.
Possible.
He could peel a lot from Trump.
Because
he could
of
peel
the
a lot
Kennedy
from
name
Biden.
and because of who his opponents would be.
Right. But whether he could win or not, look, if he runs as a third party, look, here's the point here.
So
if he runs,
majority of independents, does he start off by saying, "You dumbass Democratic and majority of
he
dumbass
doesn't have to put it as
voters"?
on the nose as I would by saying "you dumbass Democratic voters," but he should
No,
absolutely
that's the
come
same
out.
as denouncing Biden, right? Because if you denounce
No,
Biden,
because you could denounce Trump without denouncing his voters. There's a way to attack Trump without calling his voters deplorable. That was our whole argument for Bernie in 2016 is, yeah, he's opposed to Trump, but he doesn't insult the people who voted for Trump. So there is a way to attack Biden very, very harshly without insulting his voters. Now, me personally, I would love him if he insulted his voters, since that's my beat, right? But but he should absolutely start out being extremely hostile, if not more hostile to Biden than to Trump. And look, where the voters go, the voters are going to go where they go. So look, in all seriousness, should you start by attacking the voters? No. But you should definitely attack Joe Biden to the point where his most loyal voters, i.e. the, politics girl, Ukraine flag waving shit libs, you should absolutely antagonize them as much as possible from the jump. Yes, I do think that.
right?
Because the Bernie 2020 campaign was an experiment in trying to appeal to their better judgment and win them over.
Yes.
That was the experiment. And
all the people you
win
win by attacking them outweighs the number of them you're going to get.
Because you're going to get none of them. You're going to get nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
You're much better off
That was the
attacking
Bernie
them.
experiment. That's why I did not fault Bernie in that 2020 campaign. I didn't fault him for parroting the Russiagate stuff. I didn't fault him for going along with the impeachment stuff, even though a lot of people with my politics were very, very upset about that. I said, look, guys, he has to win a Democratic primary. You can't win a Democratic primary by sticking your thumb in the eye of the MSNBC crowd. You have to try and appeal to their better judgment to get them to come around and vote for you. I was all in for that in 2020 because that was the best chance we had to fast track those policy items that I thought were very, very important. But the way that primary played out in the 11th hour proved to me, and should prove to anybody, and I thought it proved to you, Anis, because you wrote a wonderful Dem Exit article that none of these outlets would touch. And so I told you, hey, I'll take it. We published it, and it did really, really well. It was a great article. Like, that should have been the end of trying to appeal to the Democratic primary power base. Those PMC, MSNBC addicts, they are garbage. Garbage. We don't care what they think. You can win an election without them. Trump proved that, right? You can beat them. There's more of everybody else than there are of them. You have to build a coalition there because this Democratic Party road is just a dead end. Anyway, sorry. I know you wasted your response by asking me another question. So I'm curious to hear what you think.
No, not at all. Yeah, no, I mean, these are good
I know it sounds
points.
like I'm beating up on you, but you know I value what you have to say tremendously. So I want to hear your answer.
No, not at all. Yeah, no, I mean, these are all good points. And I raised a lot of them today in this follow-up essay that I wrote. I want to start by saying that I think we're fighting the last war with all these comments. These questions, I think, should have been raised and with more skepticism in 2019 when Bernie 2020 was running. So I understand where that motivation, that feeling comes from. Well, okay, my good friend Biden. I'll say about that Bernie saying my good friend Biden and totally disarming himself during those fake debates, the whole fake campaign he ran. He didn't just not fight Biden, but he didn't oppose any of his opponents, even Elizabeth Warren. He was like, okay, if you guys hand me the nomination on a platter and give it to me without my saying anything negative about you, fine, I'll take it. I'll do it, But if I have to fight for it, I'm not going to do it. If you hear RFK saying, I don't know if he's used the words "my good friend," but whatever, he
said they've been a family friend for like 40
a family
years,
friend, right? Okay, but immediately the criticism that you hear from him about Biden on policy, that's what I've heard on policy after policy, on everything. It is so harsh that Bernie never went in that route. I mean, Bernie did not have a critique of Biden or the Democratic Party. He just had an alternative fantasy of Medicare for all and Green New Deal and free higher education. And it was like, it just always felt fake and fantasy to me because that's what he was doing. Like, this is my fantasy. It wasn't so true in 2016 because he genuinely disliked Hillary Clinton, I think, and his positions were more rooted in reality when he would talk about in 2016 about campaign finance reform, about more commonsensical things. He wasn't living in this fantasy woke world as he did in 2020. So, as I think that RFK saying those few words about Biden, I think Biden is a very old man now. I mean, on the death's doorstep if he wasn't getting the medical care and the attention, if he wasn't the president, right? He'd be in really bad shape now, right? He'd be in really bad shape. So I think he's sort of being also a little respectful for him.
It's like the Bathory Castle. All the young virgins are disappearing since he became president.
Since he became president. Yeah, how is he? What blood is he feeding on? Right? We don't know.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
So I think that, I mean, as you said, that I wrote one of the first essays on Demexit, which way back in March of 2020, nobody would touch because it was just too dynamite. They were like, oh, we don't want to go there, right? Then Demexit became really a thing, and people were like, okay, Demexit, fine, okay. So here I am now. He's running as a Democrat. I mean, he's running as who he is. He thinks of himself as a Democrat. Bernie was a democratic socialist and independent running as a Democrat. So that's a weird thing.
Okay, but who cares?
That's a good point.
Who cares?
But yeah.
You're telling me you like the way
Bernie was just a bunch of hypocrisies and
contradictions
and insecurities, and I don't see that in this guy.
Who cares?
I do care because you're comparing.
He's playing in a rigged casino. He's playing in a rigged casino. No, I don't care how he plays poker.
Okay, you're comparing this to Bernie 2020, right? So that's why I'm bringing
anybody who runs in a Democratic primary is playing a game in a rigged casino.
All right. Well,
now if you came out and you said, I'm going to use the apparatus of the Democratic Party, and then I'm going to make a break at the end of it. Now you got people who have this fantasy. No. He's just biding his time. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me just
do people remember beyond like what they had for breakfast yesterday? Do you remember how this ends? Come on, man. Look, he's telling you straight out. He's already signaling, my good friend Joe. He's already telling you. I am not gonna burn these people. Now, if you can't hear that, or you want to hear it another way,
I'm not hearing
that
at all.
He didn't say what he said.
Let me tell you why I'm not.
I'm using a general you. I don't use specific. I
mean, Bernie comparison is important because we all realize and accept what Bernie did to us, to the left movement, how he shattered it, how he was a sheepdog. And I'm telling you that I don't see this rhetoric and this sentiment in RFK. And, the proof is what's happening now is that in less than a month, in just 3 weeks, he's at 35, 36 in a general poll. He's at 19%. I expect that to go up in the 20s, 30s, and 40s in short order. Then what happens? So he's running as a Democrat. If you're pulling even with Biden at 45, 50, whatever, then what? How can he not have primary debates? How can he compare? They
won't.
Well, we'll have
okay. Hey, man. If I'm wrong, people can have a good time at my expense.
Well, in a way,
but I am telling you, RFK could be at 85%. They're not going to give him a primary.
What you're saying is that you not only not have faith in the Democratic Party, but what you're really saying is you no longer have faith in the democratic system, in liberalism, in none of this. This can't work because
I said he should run as an independent. So
right, we're talking about how a specific organization,
we're talking about
the
running
Democratic
in a Democratic
National
primary.
Committee, we're talking about how they do business. They've
That's
already
it.
told us how they do
it.
business.
Right. They
Simone
told us
Sanders just
in
went on the
court.
TV and said the DNC
Right.
will not facilitate a primary process because there is an incumbent who wants to run again.
That's
right.
it.
So
that's
how
not an indictment of the overall system.
How would he be doing as an independent? Would he be a Howie Hawkins? Would he be a Ralph Nader?
No, he wouldn't
because his name's not Howie Hawkins.
Right, his name is Robert F. Kennedy. Right.
So now you're buying into the argument that a large part of it is just his name.
Well, no, but there needs to be. Look, what my argument
No,
is,
I don't think it's just the name. I think he's able to put together a lot. Look, man, a lot of those Trump people, they don't like Trump.
They like him. The Trump people like him. The Trump people like RFK.
Yeah.
A lot of progressives like RFK.
If you give them somebody who's going to kamikaze the establishment like Trump will, who's more credible than Trump, who's not a New York loudmouth, I mean, that's one of the funniest things for me as a New Yorker, because these people traditionally don't like us. And the fact that they've rallied around a guy who could not be more of a stereotypical loudmouth New Yorker is funny. You give them an option of somebody who's going to piss off the Morning Joe crowd as much as Trump does, who's not Trump, he'll be able to peel away a lot of them. I'm not saying he has no political potential. I'm saying he has no future inside the Democratic Party. And as long as he's running inside the Democratic Party, while at the same time, just like Bernie, not really being willing to go at Joe the way you would go at Joe if you don't give a fuck.
He's gonna go after Joe. And can I just respond to
his good friend Joe? Is good that Joe? Is good friend Joe?
I'm not hearing Bernie's attitude toward Joe Biden in RFK at all. I'm not hearing that. I'm really not. And as far as his rhetoric is concerned, you mentioned sort of the throwback to RFK Sr. But I think what's interesting and the reason why a number of things, as I said, this is not 2020. Empire is teetering and tottering. It is in much, much worse shape than it was in 2020. The situation is really fragile. Biden is fragile. They're putting up this front like he's unbeatable. He's going to beat Trump. Trump is like beating him handily, right? As is DeSantis, but Trump even more so. So I think look at what's happened internationally with China, developments in the Middle East. China is so much more empowered. The de-dollarization is beginning to take place. The empire is so much weaker in 2020. Biden is their figurehead. It is not 2020 when he came in riding, the fears of the pandemic and like, I'm just going to do this.
If they can't run Biden, they'll grab one of their goons off the bench. They don't give a fuck. They are not going to allow anybody to take over that party who's going to end their grift. It is not a political party. It is a make work, make opportunity, make wealth party for the PMCs and consultants who control it. It is one big fucking scam. It's a scam. They have no interest in democracy. They have no interest in morals. They have no interest in fairness. They are going to keep their grift going. The real issue they had with Bernie was that he would have driven all the money lenders out of the temple. He would have fired all of the consultants. All these people would have lost their jobs. They are not going to let anybody lead that party who's going to fire them. They have no interest in doing that. They went into court and made it clear they will never let that happen, even if they have to go into a back room and pick the candidate and nullify the results of a primary contest, which they're not going to hold to begin with.
I'm going to say that Bernie was a very insecure individual, and he attracted many insecure supporters. I've noticed one thing is that, we were in this whole Bernie sphere in both 2016 and 2020. There's so far seems to be very little crossover of Bernie 2020 supporters to RFK. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I find that really fascinating. And some of them will just say well, the one issue that we know, the unmentionable, where they're like, oh, you know what, that's I can't do it either personally. Or they say, well, the others, it's going to be a deal breaker for the others. They say that, but other than that, I mean, it's just fascinating that he could be aligned with all of their issues that they supposedly care for, right, in 2020, and yet they don't want to go there. And I think it's fundamentally a Bernie.
No, but Anis, once again, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're making my argument for me here, which is the reason the Bernie people aren't going to RFK is because the Bernie people are too blue-pilled at the end of the day, despite their support for Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. They're too blue-pilled at the end of the day to go for RFK. Why? Because they're fucking, what's the word I'm looking for? Democrats, right? That's the operative concept here. That's why the Bernie people won't go to RFK, because he challenges that orthodoxy too much. And if Bernie challenged that orthodoxy too much for them, and they did to Bernie what they were able to do to Bernie when he was about to win, then what do you think they're going to do to this guy, man? I mean, he's a Kennedy. Don't forget.
I was having an exchange with one of the few dyed-in-the-wool Democrats who's still willing to deal with me. And, when I talked about, I mentioned how one of the reasons Trump is blowing out Biden is because of his position on Ukraine. And the person automatically, just because of the way their brain works, thought I was complaining about that. Meaning that my meaning was, isn't this country fucked up that people like Trump's position on Ukraine and Biden is losing? And the person commiserated with me. Oh, yeah, that's terrible. They don't care what it's going to mean to world democracy. This is how fucking brainwashed these people are. That's RFK is going to win those people over? Like, you're assuming a Democratic base that would agree with him on any of this. He's doing this well in national polls because he's getting some Trump people. He's getting some independents.
Yeah,
he's getting some independents. He's getting a small sliver of Democrats. Probably half of them are 85 and think he's his father.
I think he's got a real chance because he accepts the darkness in a way that Bernie and Bernie supporters never were willing to. And so it's not just RFK Sr.'s speeches or rhetoric or ideology, as it was, let's say, after MLK's assassination. And if you heard that speech, right, it was not really going to the darkness in the American soul. And I think this guy, RFK Jr., is going there. He's going there all the time. And that sounds very much like Trump as well. And it was interesting, in that town hall, which I found just absolutely fascinating, when Trump admitted it, and you have to wonder, that was really remarkable when he said, first of all, on Russia, Ukraine, and he's like, I don't believe in, winning versus losing, and people are dying, they're dying, right? So that's interesting. But the other thing he said that was amazing was, we will default at some point. And in a way, I mean, that's fascinating that he would say that, because essentially, in a weird sort of way, he's recognizing that we're bankrupt. We're going to be bankrupt. And he's also saying we can't be running this empire.
That was actually, you're right. Nobody really talked about that moment. Right. That was very interesting.
Okay, now that's very interesting. And soon the entire Republican Party is going to be there because he's leading them as usual. Now, it's very interesting, Keaton, what you said was should RFK be supporting Trump over Biden? And I would say to that, he essentially, in a way, is our Trump. And I mean that. He doesn't need to do that because, in a way, he thinks that he is not co-opting because he has his own independent thinking process. He's not just taking from Trump, right? He thinks within the liberal tradition, he can have a very radical critique of inequality, of empire, of class, of race, and make it work. He really believes that, and he believes he can work that as an independent. Now, why not as an independent? I don't know. You'd have to ask him, but I mean, he's polling at, 19% within has anybody ever done that? When Bernie started, he was like 1-2%. It took him months. I mean,
his name wasn't Kennedy.
What was that?
His name isn't Kennedy.
I don't think that's all it is. I mean, I really don't think that's.
No, I don't think that's all it is either.
I'm not saying that's all it is. I'm saying you can't compare a guy named Kennedy with how a guy named Bernie Sanders started, right? An obscure senator from Vermont started. Yeah, I mean you can't compare those two things. No, I don't. I think he's getting a lot of his support from red pilled people and
how would you say?
people.
What would you say?
Not really from Democrats. I mean, the poll shows that, right?
Right. What would you say if
of
in a
Democrats and double that in the general population?
Right. In a short period of time, he is, and you can see that from the Twitter responses to my article, where conservatives, Trumpers, non-Trumpers, independents, liberals, Democrats, many Democrats.
So he should run as an independent.
You're calling them dumbass Democrats, but many Democrats saying, I don't believe in this Democratic Party. I believe in the Kennedy Democratic Party. This is bullshit. This
a very small number of them, Anis.
Well, but if he polls at 45% or 50%, are you still going to say it's a small number?
Well, look,
right?
in the Democratic Party,
polling. Look, he's already at 19%. Are you going to persist?
Are you suggesting that Are you suggesting that RFK could poll at 45% in the Democratic Party, or even 40%?
Absolutely. I'm predicting that he'll be there very soon.
Anis,
absolutely.
Man,
we'll have to see.
I know you live kind of hand to mouth.
We'll have to reconvene
on this.
Look, he's at 19. We'll have to reconvene, right? I made a bold prediction. Yeah, absolutely. He's going to get a majority. He's going to be even with Biden in the Democratic Party very soon, because this is elite liberal wokeism that nobody accepts them. And we are too swayed by the media. We are in this media world. We hear this bullshit and people are threatened with, oh my God, Trump, fascism, this, that, right? You're going to die. But when somebody from within the Democratic Party presents a message that is both dark and optimistic, and he says, it's really, really, really dark in a way that I have not seen anybody else do it, because they all come along as optimistic and believing in the American dream. This guy is saying it's an American nightmare. And guess who that sounds like? That sounds like Trump, because that's what he says, right? He's like, this is American dystopia. This is an American nightmare. Now, RFK doesn't use those words, but he's describing a nightmare of totalitarian surveillance and telling you what to do, right? So he's already taking that part of Trump's appeal, packaging it in a way that can make sense to Democrats. And I honestly believe that there's enough liberals, there's enough Democrats, and enough conservatives to listen to this, because it's free of this woke shit. And it's also free of some of Trump's dumbness, because no matter how smart he may be at a gut level in terms of, we're going to default or people shouldn't die in Ukraine, there is the dumbness about him as well, which, RFK doesn't have. So I honestly believe that he's going to attract a very large number of Democrats. We'll see about that.
Okay, all right. Well, look, we have to wrap here because we have a lot of other stuff to cover. I think 99% of what you just said there makes perfect sense. The part that doesn't is that the Democratic electorate is under the thumb of the media. The Democratic electorate is consumed by wokeness. If he were appealing to a general population, I'd be 100% on board with everything you just said.
Right.
To me,
and I'll just say one thing about that is that he is completely cognizant of that. Unlike Bernie 2020, he was like, I'm going to place nice with you, liberal asshole. All right. Media, right?
Listen.
He's on all the alternative media. He totally understands this challenge of breaking through the liberal media's perception of it and telling what you call the dumbass Democratic voters what to do. He even said, I heard him say, I'll be on Alex Jones if I need to. Alex Jones.
No, he went on Kim Iverson. Look, look, I give him credit for that.
Those would be great places.
Right. So he's on
as an independent. As an independent, that would really move the needle for him. As a Democrat, have you talked to these people?
I think we're almost in a
They are dumb as dog shit.
The Democratic Party is
that for him. You know what they do? Joy Reid's going to go on and go, RFK just spoke to Kim Iverson. They're going to go,
and that'll make him even stronger. That will make him even stronger, because when they tried to do that,
if he ran as an independent,
stronger,
right? With independents, not with Democrats.
Okay, not with Democrats.
I think at this point, the Democratic Party is so broken and so bankrupt in 2023 compared to even 2020 that a lot of it is just labels. Like, you can call, socialism in maybe in some authoritarian, Soviet influenced country, in the 60s versus California in the 70s or 80s, which was a liberal state. It was not socialist or communist, but life was so much better than even under communist paradise. If you look at education, healthcare, quality of life, right?
Sure.
So similarly,
working man's paradise.
Right. So that's, and you could say, well, they were just liberals. I'm a Marxist and I reject that. I think that this, even getting hung up on, we'll have to see how that works. And that is his challenge, right? How can he negotiate? He's running as a Democrat in the Democratic asshole party, which has just told him no debates, right? They've told him no debates. We're not going to have a primary.
And they're not going to.
Right. So how is he going to handle that? That's up to his abilities and capabilities and his intelligence. How is he going to deal with that? That's his challenge, right? I have faith in him. I have a lot more faith in him than I ever did in Bernie, who always came off to me as a very insecure person.
No, I think that is a valid. I think that's a absolutely valid point, and I do buy that. But all right, we do have to wrap now because we got a bunch of other stuff to cover. Before we wrap, Anis, I've told you this in private many times before to no avail yet. So now I'm going to tell you in public with 630 people watching. You have to start a Substack. You really have to start a Substack. You would do extremely well on Substack. What if RFK retweeted your Substack article? You'd be in business today. You'd have an online magazine.
Make a little money.
You get some subscribers. You should really start it. I will help you out with it if you need help setting it up. But you should absolutely do it because you're such a great writer and you have so much to say, not just in terms of politics, but literary criticism, poetry, fiction. So you should really do that. I was resisting publicly pressuring you. But you've pushed me to this point.
Now you have. Yes.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, I should be more savvy, right?
Yeah, go on Substack. It's easy. It's free to set up. You would do fantastic on it. I promise you would.
Yeah.
But Anis Shivani, you are writing a sequel, a part 2 to this RFK piece that's dropping soon. Okay, so we'll be on the lookout.
Right. Because anticipating a lot of the stuff that you said.
Where do they find that Counterpunch?
Well, it'll be out soon.
I haven't sent it out. I'm still writing it. I finished it, but I have to edit it and send it out.
Put it on your
But I anticipate many of these points because I can see if you are a Bernie person who was burnt by the Democratic Party, you can see what the Democratic Party is doing with the shenanigans this time, which is so much more blatant than 2020 when they've just come right out and said, no primary, we're not going to have a primary, we're not going to have debates, right? And RFK has confronted that. What if he's at 30, 35, 40, 45%, which I honestly believe he'll be there soon. Then what? How is he going to handle that, right? That's an open question. We'd love to see what he does. So given all of that, how do you justify running as a Democrat, given your critique? You also raised, Keaton, a very important point. If you truly believe in this empire stuff, why not Trump? Or if it comes to that, right? If they just push him out, if they make it impossible, who knows what they're going to try next? They're going to try. They've got their thing worked out, as I can already see from the Twitter reaction. They've gone insane, right? Because they don't want him to get traction among the general population. They want to just brand him as this, what I'm talking about, right? He's just this one person. But if they think he's got a general critique, oh my God, he's going to start appealing to all kinds of people. So then if it comes down to that, the logical choice would be, I agree with that. If it came down to those two guys, for me, it would be Trump versus Biden. Trump literally just said to you in the debate, people are dying. I don't want people to die. That's an overriding factor, overriding issue. And how could you, if you are a moral person, go against that and buy into the Democratic propaganda against Trump, right? So those are all open questions, and we'll have to see. People have already said to me, this is going to be really interesting. We didn't think a month ago that the 2024 election could be this interesting. But now, first of all, the way that they tried to destroy Trump and it backfired on them. And you could also make the argument that they were also trying to elevate Trump as the candidate that once again, these assholes in the Democratic Party think would be easier to defeat than DeSantis. So they were like, let's do this. We do the Mar-a-Lago thing. We do the Alvin Bragg thing. And, he'll be weakened. He'll get the nomination for sure. Let's make sure he gets the Republican nomination. But let's compromise him to beat him in the general election. So that's their thinking, and they're doing it again, exactly what they did in 2016, right? And they've got their whole plot against RFK if he starts going in that direction. So it'll be very interesting.
My money is still on Ron DeSantis.
Can I just say one last thing about RFK is that until 6 months ago, we talked during the 2022 election, and everything that happened since then. I appreciated Trump's rhetoric at the Waco rally, and I really liked. I know you guys didn't his election speech at Mar-a-Lago, where I thought he was very reasoned and trying to be rational and everything. And then I loved his town hall because, like, I could not believe this stupid reporter and how she was just like fact checking bullshit, and he never lost his calm. I mean, rhetorically, he's got abilities that I have not seen anybody in my lifetime, just from a plain rhetorical point of view. So what RFK's candidacy does for me, and I suspect for many liberal, leftist, Trump-leaning supporters, is that he gives us we no longer have to be in the Trump camp, if you see what I mean.
No, I know. He gives you an anti-establishment.
I've got somebody else now. I got another horse I'm backing. I can put all my mental energy, emotional energy, and I still appreciate Trump for the right reasons that you should appreciate him for: anti-war, wrapping up empire, etc., a whole bunch of things, right? But now I got a guy who's actually on the left, who's not dumb, who's giving me all the good stuff. The only question is, can he cut it, in the Democratic Party? How does he negotiate this minefield that they've really got a minefield set up for him, right? They got all the stages of torture and destruction set up for him. But the thing is, he knows it too, right? We agree that he realizes what he's in for, right? So how does he handle that? But at least I'm not I don't have to watch Trump's town halls.
Yeah, no, I understand. It gives you something else.
Look, I mean, when they make sure that he doesn't get the nomination, at least he got out a little bit. He got some air. He got to talk to people a little bit. He got to nosh. It's probably good food at the Iowa Fair.
You should have targeted that citizen.
I know. He
got the
all right, Anis. We're gonna move on because we got a bunch of other stuff. But it was great to talk to you as always.
Thanks a lot.
I'll talk to you down the line as these things develop.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's gonna be very, very, very interesting. Much more interesting than I thought.
If RFK hits 45% among Democrats,
Trump was doing not as well.
I will do my interpretation of Karma Chameleon in full drag.
You will. Okay, so this is on record, right?
That's on record.
RFK will be at 45%. I said it.
All right. With Democrats, not with the
Democrats. Yeah, he's going to be really in.
All right.
Like
full
really
Karma
strong
Chameleon.
position. That's what I'm saying.
Karma Chameleon.
We'll have to see.
Alrighty, Anis. Thank you so much. Great to see you again, my friend.
All right. Good luck with the rest of the show.
Have a great night.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. Okay.
Alrighty.
All right. It was nice to see Anis. We haven't seen him. Have we had him on since the midterms, right?
Yeah.
I've not seen Anis since the midterms.
Hey, listen. I got big news to break. Just came across. I'm not fucking with anybody. I'm not fucking with it.
Oh, you're not kidding?
No, this is serious.
It literally came 45%.
No. It literally came in this second. I got a DM from Glenn Greenwald thanking us for our David Miranda tribute.
Oh, wow.
That means something to me. I'm not going to read what it was because it's a private message, obviously. But thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn.
Absolutely. Means a lot. And obviously, best wishes.
Yeah. Hope you're holding up okay, man.
That was it. That's a highlight for doing this show for me. And I'm sure Robert Penner, our audience member who helped us put that piece together, would be quite happy to learn that Glenn saw that as well. So that's fantastic. All righty. So let's see if we can do a show. It's 8:30.
All right.
Wow, that's
we're just getting started. All right, so the coffee thing will be real brief today because I was not waiting until the end of that to drink it. So this week's was the local brew. This is almost.
Before you do that, Russell, just patron scroll. Patrons make the world go round. Here's your name up in lights while Russell drinks his coffee.
All right, so this is local. Okay, so one thing I like about this one is they got a very clever bag here. I just want to point this out. You rip this off and then it's like Ziploc. This is a little unfair because this is whole bean, so I ground it to have it. But that was a pretty good, full-bodied brew. What was funny is it's a New York coffee. and it kind of smells like broth, which is very appropriate to a New York coffee. It kind of has a brothy kind of a smell to it. It was pretty good. I'm still saying San Francisco Bay. Although that was good. I almost hesitate to say that because it's apples and oranges. So it was more like that. San Francisco Bay is more like a sweet kind of coffee. This was more like a smack you in the mouth kind of coffee. It really depends on what you want. It's very good for the type of coffee it is.
All right, so you're still saying San Francisco Bay is the reigning champion
for my taste,
for your taste. All right, excellent. All right, so we still have a winner for now. San Francisco Bay.
Okay, San Francisco Bay is closest if you really like the taste of the Starbucks French roast. It tastes almost exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, all right. So we're still looking. It's funny because San Francisco Bay was the first coffee that you tried.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the champion so far.
And probably Bustelo would be my second. It was
Bustelo
is very smooth. Very smooth.
Yeah, no, Bustelo is a quality product. Absolutely. All righty. So you can go to patreon.com/DueDissidence and help support this program. You can also go to DueDissidence.substack.com, or you could go and click the join button below your YouTube screen right now and sign up as a YouTube member. We're going to take some super chats now, where it's looking like another long show tonight. Here's a chat from Ellen Jimerson. Ellen Jimerson is a member who joined at one of the tiers that gets you permanent super chat status, and Ellen really knows how to follow instructions. That's one of many things we love about Ellen. If you join at the tier that gets you super chat status, meaning your chats are basically, we are a super chat buffet at this point. You can have as many super chats as you want per month for that tier. Just put DD at the front of your regular chat. We see it and we treat it like a super chat. So Ellen says, absolutely, RFK could be the second coming and the DNC wouldn't have him. The courts have made that clear. Also, hi to Anis. Yes, Ellen. And, Anis wrote that Dem exit piece that he shopped around after Bernie got screwed in 2020. Nobody would take it. And so he sent it to me just to read it and said, hey, nobody's taking this. I don't know what to do with it. I said, well, we'll publish it.
Yeah, right. I was going to say, we published that, right?
We published it. And you remember it got massive response.
Yeah,
massive response. It was a fantastic piece. And so, the interesting thing, one of the reasons I wanted to have Anis on is because obviously he's always fun to talk to. But I don't disagree with anything in the article. I just disagree with the idea that that's going to do anything within the Democratic Party, that's going to move the needle.
Well, that's it. That's what I kept coming back to. Like everything you said, I was just like, yeah, that sounds great for an independent.
Right. Exactly. There's nothing wrong with what you're saying. There's something wrong with who you're saying it to. Therefore, you got to find a different audience. Right. Abiding. Thanks for the 99 cents. Appreciate it. Laugh. Thanks for the £5. $8.99. PMCs reading, writing like normal. Working class are busting their ass to survive one day to the next. They don't need theory. Tusker is fab. Oh, 8.99K. Yes. We are now across 9,000, by the way. We reached 9,000 subscribers.
Did we?
Beautiful. Thank you guys very much. I'm sure we will hit 9,000. Robert Penner just sent me 3 hearts. He's watching, and he is loves the news that Glenn saw that tribute and liked it. So I'm glad that really means a ton to me. That's one of the real true highlights of doing this show is that Glenn was able to see that and hopefully find some level of solace in watching it. Patrick, thanks for the €5. Seen in comments maybe using some timestamps for the live streams. Yeah, I think that would be a welcome addition. Nearly 9K subs. Congrats in advance. Yo, so I'll be honest. Sometimes I do go back and I timestamp the live streams. Sometimes I don't because...
Don't you? I thought you always did.
I usually do, but there are times when I just feel like I want the audience to watch the whole show. I don't want them skipping to their favorite part. I want to make them watch the whole thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's being a ball breaker.
Sometimes I fuck with you a little bit.
Honestly,
no. The real reason is that when I feel like the show has come out really, really strong and tight, I'll put the timestamps in. When it doesn't, I just feel I don't know. I feel like it wasn't tight enough. It's just a mental hang up. It's stupid of me. I get a little batsy about that. As Russell knows, I tend to overthink things from time to time. How about
we both have our weird
both have our quirks. We both have our quirks. Like if there's a segment that I thought didn't come out good, I won't do the timestamp because I'll like have it in my head. Oh, people are gonna go to it. They're not gonna like it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's that's why we make a good team. We have like complementary neuroses.
Complementary neuroses. Like if I think we fucked up a segment or we whiffed and it really didn't come out good, I'm like, oh, I don't want to direct people to that. Then they're not gonna like it. No. These are some comments on my haircut I'm taking, even if they're not super chats. Keaton got his money's worth with that haircut, and as a fiscal conservative, I support the strategy. Well, thank you. Yes. I was hearing some of that. I was hearing some Full Metal Jacket, references.
Yeah, a little
Kinky.
bit of that.
Is Keaton calling Democrats deplorables? Yes, I am. Guilty as charged. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Zach. Russ, the hostility will be better served to simply encourage RFK to split to Indy and loudly say you'll support him, drop the negativity. All right.
Well, I'm negative about him running inside the Democratic Party. I haven't been negative about him. Except, look, man, like one of the things that when I got red-pilled or black-pilled or blue-pilled or whatever the fuck you want to call it, one of the things that opened my eyes to was these people are not royalty, okay? We tend to treat them that way. We don't owe these people fucking shit. We don't owe them deference. We don't owe them benefit of the doubt. We owe them fucking nothing. So when you turn around and you say, my good friend Joe Biden, call it out. What do you mean your good friend with the segregationist buddies who authored mass incarceration and is the reason that students can't dispatch their loans in bankruptcy? What do you mean your good friend? Hold them to account. I don't care who it is. You don't owe politicians shit. Not shit. Don't let them get away with that.
I agree with that. I told you he calls Fauci flowery language, yet the actions were a book in crucifying him. Good friend is used not to alienate his Dem supporters. I understand the strategy. I understand that. I understand that. It's not going to work. He could lick Joe Biden's ball sack on camera, and those shit libs would not pay him the time of day, would not give him the time of day.
There are some strange people on the internet who would pay him just for having done it, though.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Again, the independents would like it. You'll need to heal the wounds Bernie has caused. Yeah. Listen. Listen. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine. We've removed ourselves from a toxic relationship. That's what you're supposed to do. We have healed. He's the one who hasn't healed. You're the one who hasn't healed. If you're going back to the Democrats, you're the one who's got to heal.
Right.
That's what I'd say to that.
Right. You need to get yourself into a clinic for battered voters.
Right, exactly.
All right, get yourself into a halfway house.
No scrubs. All right. Red Z, thanks for the $2. Keaton, don't stay up late. It's a school night. I know I look young. I look very young now. By the way, Tusker wished everyone a happy Mother's Day. I want to do that myself. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms. Happy Mother's Day to my mom, to my lovely wife Amanda, the best mom there ever was. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. In fact, one thing we didn't bring up with Anis, I wanted to wish Anis's cat a happy Mother's Day because Anis adopts stray cats and cares for them. And he took in a stray cat. I think it was last week or a couple weeks ago. He was messaging me, and the cat was kind of sluggish and wasn't moving around too well. So he took it to the vet. Turns out the cat's pregnant, and the cat could give birth any moment. So when I asked him if he wanted to come on the show this evening, he says, "Yeah, I can make it as long as my cat's not giving birth while we're on the air." So that was the caveat he gave me. So happy Mother's Day to Anis's cat. Congrats to the new mother. Mastario, thanks for the $10. By saying Joe is my friend, he alienates workers, anti-frackers, black people, immigrants, anti-imperialists, people for Medicare for all, indebted students, etc. But God forbid he alienates the rest of the other Dems. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, look, I wish he alienated those voter blocks more than he actually does because a lot of Democrats are, as Jimmy Dore puts it, the children of abusive alcoholics, where they keep going back to that party. But I take your point, and it is a good one. This like civility politics within the Democratic Party does show a loyalty to them over the people who have been victimized by these neoliberal policies over the past several decades. So I take your point. It's a good one. Oops. I hope I didn't just block you by accident. I may have hit a wrong button. I hope I didn't block the super chat. If you're Mastario and I accidentally blocked you, please get in touch with us somehow, and I will unblock you. It's literally the star button is literally right next to where you take actions against the user. So if you're off by like a centimeter, you can accidentally block someone, which is kind of fucked up, StreamYard. But anyway, I don't think I did. But if I did, I do apologize, and I will get you your access back. Zach, thanks for the $4.99. We needed Bernie to say those things because we sent something off. RFK doesn't need to prove anything in the last 3 years. He did more than Bernie would dare. All right, listen, man, okay. I take your point. This is all rationalizing.
Yeah,
this is all, he didn't mean it. He didn't mean it, right? I shouldn't have made him angry. That's why he hit me. That's what that sounds like to me. Courtney, thanks for the $5. The more you want to give your amazing educated opinions on the Dem corruption and Dem campaigns, please do. We need more intelligence lacking. Thank you, Courtney. We appreciate that very much. We'll knock out a few more of these, and then we have a bunch of stuff to do this evening. Who cut your hair? Some barber in the Weimar Republic. Ha ha. Good one.
Yeah.
Good.
I beat you to the punch.
I tell you, man, it feels so good not having that mop on my head because of the move and everything. And now we have no childcare because we took the kids out of daycare for the move. Like, I have no time to get a haircut. So, like, that haircut was 6 weeks before it should have happened. And you think, come on, you couldn't find an hour in the past 6 weeks to go get your haircut? Well, no, I couldn't, because I either had to work myself, be a father to my kids, be a husband to my wife, which are all very important to me, or I had to be here with you assholes. So I literally did not have an hour. So I finally got an hour the other day and got it, chopped it all off so I could start all over again. All right.
This is what Jews call passing.
Yeah, exactly. Join side. Thank you for the $5.50. Democratic Party would rather lose to Trump than allow RFK to see the light of day. 100%. No doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. That's why they will do if it comes to it. They would have done a superdelegate coup against Bernie if it came to it. And
Trump's good for business for them, man. As long as they can fundraise off the shit.
Right.
A guy like RFK comes in there and fires the consultants. No, baby. That's what it's about. Right. That's it.
Exactly. Janice Anderson, DNC lawyer Spiva, argued in court that they are not obligated to honor the primary vote count. They could just appoint who they want. Yeah, no, that was their argument.
That's it.
That was their argument. That was their argument, of course. Of course. Plain as day. You Bernie bros too. Such negativity. Try positive. I mean, I thought negativity was that's kind of the core brand proposition of this show is negativity. So, I mean, we can't really go positive. We go positive, we lose all.
We go positive, that's it. We have to start all over again.
Who the hell's going to watch that?
Come on.
How fucking boring is that? Positivity? Why don't you go watch the Marianne Williamson podcast? Positivity. I like Keaton's new Marine recruit look. Thank you, Chris Bishop. We appreciate that. All right. We have some more super chats. We're going to get to them soon. But right now, we are going to go into some more segments here. So speaking of empire, we talked a little bit about that with our friend Anis Shivani. This is an interesting story that broke, Washington Post exclusive. Zelensky in private plots bold attacks inside Russia, leaks show. The Discord leaks. U.S. intercepts reveal that the Ukrainian leader's aggressive instincts, a marked contrast to his public-facing image as the stoic statesman weathering Russia's brutal onslaught. So, of course, because this is the Washington Post, they frame this in a positive light, even though the revelations are quite damning. Mainly that here, as we'll see here, behind closed doors, Ukraine's leader has proposed going in a more audacious direction as opposed to the direction that we want him to go in, which is fight up to but not across Russia's border. Because we honestly, for all our bullshit here in the U.S., we don't really care who wins the war either. We just want the war to keep going because war is good for the people who profit off of war. That's why Biden says, no, we can't give you the long-range missiles. We can only give you the mid-range missiles because you can't actually fire into Russia. That's a problem for us. You can defend yourself up to Russia's border, but no further. So not only does Zelensky want to launch missiles into Russia, but he also has spoken about occupying Russian villages, obviously to gain leverage over Moscow. But here's this one. Bombing a pipeline. See if this sounds familiar to anyone. Bombing a pipeline that transfers Russian oil to Hungary, a NATO member, and privately pining for long-range missiles to hit target inside Russia's borders. So He's planning to take the attack inside Russia's borders and talked about bombing a pipeline. We have our suspicions that this wouldn't be the first pipeline they blew up, but rather the second. Hungary, of course, a NATO member. Now, it is arguably one of the more pro-Russian NATO members, but a NATO member nonetheless. You don't blow up a pipeline carrying vital natural resources to your ally, do you? Is that any way to treat a NATO ally? If a non-NATO state did that to a NATO state, you know what that would be? World War III, which is why we've been saying all along, it's this little punk who really wants World War III if it comes to that.
Yes. Yes. We are dumping all of this money and all of these munitions into the most corrupt country in Europe, run by a half-assed comedian who has already demonstrated by lying about a stray missile that landed in Poland, which he probably damn well knew was an accident. Certainly by the time he kept repeating it for days after it had already been shown that it was very clearly not intentional. This fucking maniac wants to start World War III. And you cannot rely on the idea, look at the drone that hit the Kremlin. You cannot rely on the idea that he won't force our hand, that he won't do something that forces us off the fence into a hot war with Russia. This guy's a little fucking maniac. He's dangerous, and he wants nothing more than to get the American military fighting this war directly.
Right, right. Which you have to say, as leader of Ukraine, you can't really expect him to want any different, right? I mean,
Sure.
He's just looking out for number one. That's what a leader does, right? We're not saying we necessarily fault him for that. But again, what role do we play? What role do we play? Do we play the role of pouring fuel on this fire, fighting to a stalemate, which just results in more and more Ukrainian bodies piling up tragically and horrifically? Or do we end it? Do we end it? Do we sit Zelensky down and saying, listen, we're cutting you off, sit down and work something out. Sit down and work something out. Not let Putin run roughshod over the country. That's never been what we have advocated for. You force peace talks by saying, listen, we're not doing this anymore. We can't have this. The world can't have this. Your country can't have this. The Ukrainian people can't have this. The Ukrainian people are the ones being most victimized by this, obviously. Obviously. Now you say, well, there were Ukrainian people want to fight. Good for them. Good for them. But we can't.
You're fighting with our money. You're fighting with our weapons. You can want to do whatever you want, but you can't do it with somebody else's money. So in the end, if you're using our money, you're dependent on our decisions. That's how it is.
That's one thing. And the other thing is, look, sometimes you can be too close to a thing. When you're too close to a thing, you don't know what's good for you. What's good for the Ukrainian people is to get this war settled. And by the way, it was never Moscow's intention to wave a Russian flag over Kyiv. Russia doesn't even want Ukraine. They wanted three things. They wanted neutrality, meaning no NATO status for Ukraine. They wanted independence for the separatist region, and they wanted Crimea. Those are their three goals. As far as I know, those are still their three aims, which is pretty surprising considering everything that's gone on. So those are terms that you can meet, or we can just keep watching the bodies pile up. Jeremy Corbyn said when the war started, all wars end in diplomacy, all of them. So why don't we just skip the killing part and go straight to the talking part?
Right.
Think about that, right? That's truer now than it was when he said it, and it was true when he said it.
And the longer this goes on, the better the chances are that this blows up into World War III, especially when you got a leader in Ukraine who is desperately trying to manipulate the West into starting World War III. That's what's so dangerous about this. I mean, that's what this really shows you, which, I mean, we already knew. This just puts a button on it. This guy really wants to do things that will establish facts in the field, where once he does it, we're forced to deal with that new reality. And the longer this goes on, the better chance he's going to pull something like that. You get the sense right now, the only thing that's reining him in is he doesn't want to piss us off. He doesn't feel like he can afford to do that. So he's not going all the way with launching a major missile attack on Moscow, but he did launch a drone, right? I mean, that's pretty inflammatory. So what's next?
Indeed. Of course. Of course. All right, folks, we're going to move right along here. We were at 9,001. We pissed somebody off, so now we're back down to 9,000. So let's get that up. Let's get to like 9,000.
Well, that's why you got to ask them to subscribe before we start talking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can we get to like 9,015 by the end of the night? Can a dozen of you guys watching? We have 637 watching. You're a great crowd. Can a dozen of you guys hit that subscribe button right now? This way, in case we lose a couple, we're still over 9. We don't have to thank people for 9,000 again.
And
right?
then, yeah.
Exactly. That's why when we made our special thank you video when we hit 5,000, we waited. We didn't do it right when we hit 5,000. We're like, let's get to 5,000.
You got to get at least 50 clearance.
Yeah, you got to get a little clearance so that when you piss people off and they leave, you don't embarrass yourself. Yeah, I don't know who we pissed off now.
We're having Blair White on next week.
Yeah,
you better hold off.
You better hold off. Right? Exactly. All right, folks. So this next segment is kind of personal to me as a delivery driver myself. Thanks to JB from RBN, he brought this issue to my attention, and I actually called into his show just as an impromptu thing to talk a little bit about this. But here's a Florida Uber Eats driver who went viral making this video about how difficult it is in his line of work these days, talking about how much money he pulled in the previous hour and the dire straits that he found himself in. This was a tough one to watch, but I think it's important. So let's take a look.
You know, I wish people knew what it was like to deliver for Uber Eats, Postmates, DoorDash, all these companies. I just spent an hour driving around for $1.19 tip. I mean, would it hurt y'all to tip us, throw us $5? I got $1.19 tip and $2 from the app. What's that? That's not even enough to cover gas. How am I supposed to survive like that? Homeless. I'm there. This that I'm sitting in, it's gone. 4 months behind. There's no way I could pay for that. Everything fell apart on me. I haven't been able to sustain myself, provide for myself. And these are essential services. I just wish people knew what it was like. I wish they understood what it was like to drive for these services.
So, what it's like to drive for these services is you get no guaranteed wage. It's gig work. You can be out there for 2 hours. If you don't see an order that's worth taking and you turn them all down, your earnings for those 2 hours, zero. Goose egg. The way it works is, as an independent contractor, you are free to accept or decline any request that comes in. And the way you have to work on these apps, if you're a driver, you have to decline the lousy orders. It is hugely important that you decline the lousy orders. Let someone else take them, or let the app recirculate it. If it gets rejected by everyone, the app will up the base pay to try and get that order filled. But the point is, it really is a situation where you're on your own and you have to be very discerning about which orders you take and which orders you don't. But the scary thing about being an independent contractor is that uncertainty in pay, and also just the uncertainty of working for a robot. You are working for Skynet. You don't have a boss. So if things come up, you do have to worry about, is this going to be a violation of the robot's terms, and are they going to deactivate me? It's a policy on one of the apps that I drive for. When you go and deliver groceries, some people allow you to simply take a photo of the order and leave it on their doorstep and leave. Some people insist that you hand it to them directly. And if you don't hand it to them directly, then you have to return the order to the store, which is a massive pain in the ass. And so I had this happen to me the other day, where a woman was texting back and forth with me. She says, when you get here, call me and I'll come pick up the order. Please don't knock. She probably had a baby who was napping or something like that. So I get there, I call her, no answer. I call her again, no answer. I call her again, No answer. Then I get an order come in on a different app that's a good order that I want to take. So I take it. And meanwhile, I still got to get rid of this order. And she's not coming to the goddamn door. So finally, what I do is I knock on the fucking door. And then she comes to the door 20 seconds later, all pissed off. She says, I told you not to knock. I said, okay, well, I called you 3 times and you didn't answer. And I have to make sure that you accept the order. So she says, okay, fine. She knew she kind of messed up. But the point is, if I worked for a human being, for a human boss, I could call the boss and say, listen, I know I'm not supposed to leave it here, but she just texted me what to do when I get here. So she's obviously home. Can I just leave it here so I can get on with my day? And a human being with human judgment would say, of course, go ahead, do that. But you don't work for a human being. You work for a robot, where if she claims for some reason that she didn't get the order because she wants her money back, she's trying to screw you, guess what? That's a policy violation. I'm now on the hook for those groceries, which means they don't charge you for the groceries, but they can me. And by they, I mean the algorithm, right? So there's no job security in this in that sense. There are really freeing things about being on your own and working on your own. One of the things I love about it is I get to do research for the show while I'm working because I'm just working alone in a car, so I can listen to a podcast about whatever issue we're talking about later or things like that. But the scary part about it is, yeah, there's no income security and there's no HR department to go to when you get screwed. And so that brings us into this next video that we're going to play about the experience of being an Uber driver, which Russell's going to set up because Russell tipped me off to this.
All right. So this video has gone viral, not in the way that the piece of garbage who made the video intended. So this is like a half-assed influencer. Her name is Knock Knock. I believe she's Vietnamese. And basically she goes around and tries Asian food and on Instagram. And she thought she was going to get woke points because a driver, you never see him, but speaks very broken English, had the temerity to make a politically incorrect comment, not meaning to, saying, I can't tell where you're from, Asians look the same to me, at which point she decides to make an incredible row out of it, needs to get out of the car, and needs to lecture this guy, turns the camera eyes. He's begging her because he has a daughter. He's terrified of losing his job. Now, this is something I'm sure we'll get into with hopefully soon to be friend of the show, Norm Finkelstein, on Tuesday. This is a great example for me of how identity politics mask class issues. Because who has the privilege in this situation? You tell me. Who has the privilege here?
Exactly.
Her or him?
She literally gets out of the car at the end saying, I have to go to a meeting now. She's one of these PMC lib types who not only thought this was an opportunity to scold this guy, but most importantly, to do it on camera so that she can get her woke points.
She wound up having to pull the video down because she got, you want a bright spot to this story? She got viciously attacked online, so she pulled it down and then did the obligatory apology because she wants to keep making her Instagram money. I'm really reflecting on this now. Yeah, sure you are.
Yeah,
sure you are.
Excuse me, do you mind if you just drop me off here?
Whatever, you okay here?
So this is somebody else posting it and commenting on it.
Yeah, because she pulled it down.
Right.
Everything is fine. However, just in future, what you said to me was quite offensive about how you were trying to guess where I'm from because you think we all look the same. And then you said, oh, I couldn't tell where you were from, because you look a little bit different. That's very racist.
But I didn't guess the way you could be. I said maybe you look a little bit different to them. Sorry, please don't get me wrong. My English is not as perfect.
Yeah.
My girlfriend is Chinese, and I love the Asian people because they're so polite, so kind.
Right.
We do as a she like we do as a like a joke. See, I said this, my Buddha is her name.
So this is probably, we don't want to make too many assumptions about this guy, but it could be an immigrant. A lot of immigrants drive Uber and Lyft because it's just easier to get set up through gig apps than it is to actually go through a W-2 situation. And what do we say all the time? The wokest people are the white, well-to-do libs, right? So you're not talking to a guilty white liberal here. You're talking to a guy who's trying to make some conversation and maybe said something that, technically it's a touchy thing. You should probably, when I used to drive passengers, I don't do it anymore. I would stick to, nice day today, or cold out there today.
Well, I'm sure.
Today.
Well, you know what? I was thinking about that after this. You know, now this poor bastard is never going to talk to anybody.
Never going to talk to anybody again. Right. Exactly.
Hello, where are you going?
Right. Exactly.
And then this is my girlfriend. Please don't get me wrong. I love the Asian people. They're so polite there.
Yeah,
so kind.
So there's
Please
a
don't get
difference.
me
No,
wrong.
no. There's a difference between you loving Asian people, and there's a difference between you saying that we all look the same.
It's one thing to
and that
lecture
you were
a guy
trying to
like
guess where
this.
I'm
It's
from
another thing
because I
to
look
do it
different
for
to
the
them.
camera.
To them.
Just knowing that you're going to get an audience.
She thought she's going to get all this positive feedback.
Exactly, because of the I don't have a perfect English.
No, it's fine.
It's
And
all
like
for the camera.
I understand where you're coming from, but at this moment I don't feel comfortable in this car, and I'm going to get another one.
I'm really, madam, please forgive me. I really don't mean it about that. But if something is wrong, this company will fire me. And
this company will fire me if I did something wrong. So this goes back to what I was saying, right? If this guy were working for a company with a human boss, the boss might say, hey, look, in the future, it's probably best not to ask what nationality someone's from since you're opening up a can of worms. You know, you would have a human being who you could deal with to decide whether or not to keep you on board after a transgression like that. In this case, obviously a very, very mild one. With Uber, when you work for these gig apps, you're not a human being to them. You are a number to them. And at the point where that algorithm determines that you are a bigger liability than you're worth, they can just get rid of you. They get rid of you for any reason, no matter what, because they got millions of people behind you willing to get in a car and drive people around.
Well,
there's no recourse. That's one of the reasons why he's so terrified. All she has to do is hit a button on her app that the driver was rude, and he's fucked. He's fucked. You can't even call somebody. You call, support, driver support. You get someone who they outsource in the Philippines reading automated responses off a screen for $3 an hour. That's it. You don't get actual support when you call driver support. There's no actual department that gives a fuck about you. That's one of the reasons why he's so terrified there.
Yeah, and I'd like to know if she's ever had to beg for a job, because I guarantee you the answer is no.
Well, she says here. I mean, we don't have to go through the whole thing. It gets kind of
repetitive. No. I mean, there he gets into. He has a daughter.
Something wrong. This company will fire me, and I have a daughter. I swear to God, I don't mean this.
Yeah.
Please forgive me. I swear to God, I don't mean it of this.
Yeah, I know.
Really
like
sorry.
I appreciate that you don't mean it from a bad place, and I'm not going to say anything to the company.
Yeah,
I'm just want you.
I'm just going to put it on TikTok.
I'm telling you, I'm not going to say anything to the company because I understand that you're saying it's a barrier of language. I get that, but I'm just saying to you, in future, just don't say things like that because it's very, very offensive to us.
I swear to God, it's don't meaning of this.
It's fine. I've got a meeting. I've got a meeting to go to.
I've got a meeting to go to. I'm putting in my Bluetooth headphones.
Yes, because I
going to
don't
my
feel comfortable.
air-conditioned co-worker space.
You have to respect my wishes. I don't feel
Getting an
comfortable.
iced tea out of the refrigerator and sitting down for my meeting after lecturing.
It's all right. Don't worry.
As
Thank
immigrant
you.
Uber driver.
Look at her. Oh, she's crying.
Raging.
Hamming it up.
I'm raging. This is the kind of narcissistic psychopath that this ideology empowers. How do you treat this guy like this? I mean, let's say he was out of line. Okay. I mean, it seems to me like a cultural thing. Like it didn't even occur to him that this was an insulting thing to say to her. I mean, I wouldn't have said something like that. It's like a cliche in the Western world, right? Oh, you all look alike to me. It's that cliche. Right. But he's not from here. I'm sure he's not even aware that that's this cliche kind of racist thing to say to somebody. So you're going to pull out your phone and make a production out of that and throw it up on TikTok expecting to get all this positive feedback. And like I said, that's the bright spot in this story, that she actually got slammed for posting this video and people actually were able to parse out what you sick fuck. What is wrong with you? The guy's talking about he has a daughter. That's what's funny. Like maybe you might have started filming it and then you're such a sick person you didn't realize when you played this back how you come off.
Right. Yeah.
That's how much
crazy.
of a narcissist you are. You don't realize how that plays. But you have a lot of the same people. That's what was interesting about this to me. A lot of the same people who will run around talking about intersectionality and oppression and power dynamics, because there is, and this is why I mentioned Norm, because he talks about this a lot in his book. They have no class analysis by design. By design, they have no class analysis. So this is okay. This is fine to piss on this poor Uber driver.
Right, exactly. Because the idea that she's on
it's
her
not
way to
like
a meeting.
It's not like misgendering somebody.
Right, exactly.
Fuck
right.
this
Just
guy.
beating up on the poor people for being too stupid to buy into our woke outlook, right? I mean, that it's like, oh, okay, it is the deplorable attitude in this case, not directed towards a white person, but to a working class person who happens to be, obviously, from what we could tell there, an ethnic minority himself. Although she'd probably cancel us for making that wild assumption, right? She'd probably get us on a TikTok video.
They'll always find a way to twist it.
They'll always find a way to twist it, indeed. All right, folks. So it is Sunday. We all know what that means. We have an announcement that we really, this is really a moving thing happened to us over the weekend. It is Sunday night now. Yesterday morning, about 11:30 a.m., New York time, Russell and I, we get a text message from Extra Bulla, who is running for president in 2024 and who we are happy to fully endorse and fully back. We get a text from him saying, guys, you need to get on a plane to Vegas right now.
I was a little conflicted because I was like, we just did a segment about that. Jesus.
Yeah. And we said,
so
what
hypocritical.
Do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? He says, trust me, get on a plane and Uber to this address. And then we look up the address and we're like, oh no, it's one of these chapels. What happened? Well, what happened was Extra Bulla was actually using the same unisex bathroom as Courtney Love. And it just happened to be one of those situations where two people in the right place at the right time met and hit it off and fell in love. And we're very, very happy for Extra Bulla and Courtney Love. And so once we got there, we were just really, really moved by the ceremony. It was such a wonderful time. Here we have a photo of the events, just beautiful, such an honor to be there. Now I understand you could see Bulla and Courtney there. And, unfortunately, I took a look at what they had in the wardrobe at the chapel, and that was all I could find. I know it's a woman's outfit, and Russell's sitting in back of me there. Just a really, really beautiful, moving, touching ceremony. And, going to that space with Extra Bulla, reminded me why he should be the next president. And I understand, that there are some people
especially
who are
they sprung for the 7-song package.
Yeah, exactly. The 7-song package. Yeah, just a wonderful, wonderful ceremony. Such a great time. And look, I understand that there are going to be people who say, well, Keaton and Russell, how are you going to comment objectively on the Extra Bulla campaign now that you were at his wedding? I understand. That's a valid criticism, and you can take our support for his candidacy with whatever sort of skepticism you like.
We're opinion journalists.
Right. It's not like we were NBC journalists. We're opinion journalists.
No. We never said that the things that we say are truthful or valid.
Right. We don't claim to be honest. We're opinion journalists. We're in the tank for Extra Bulla.
Quite the opposite.
That's why we're trying to get this RFK guy out of the fucking race. We're like, what's going on here?
I've made it very clear that I'm a pathological liar. Right. So if you believe what I say, well, you're not paying attention.
And look, we're very open about the fact that Extra Bulla is our friend. We haven't hidden that. We just, we feel like he's our friend. We can go to his wedding and we can support his campaign. And people should take what we say at face value, even though, he's our friend. Now, if you don't want to, you don't have to.
We're not
That's
supporting his campaign. We're just interviewing him, never criticizing him, speaking positively of him of all occasions, and talking up his poll numbers. But we're not actually supporting him, though.
No, and look, he might do a dirty break, and whether he does a dirty break or not, we think that by supporting his campaign, let's see, where are we at now? We are at 9,004 subscribers. There we go. So we get 999,000 more to go, and this campaign will have worked out very well for us. So that's just something
hit that subscribe button.
Hit that subscribe button, absolutely. So that's just something that we wanted to say. Want to thank Extra Bulla for the invite. That was a great time. And like I said, we look forward to having you on the show sometime soon. All right. Let's take a few more super chats, and then we'll get on with the program. Aiden ALW, thanks for the $5. Anything good we got came through movement, civil rights, a weekend. That's true. Abolition, women's suffrage, Bill of Rights. Elections are a waste of energy. Now, given the options, you are right. I would have to say. Zach, thanks for the $4.99. The more aware of COVID corruption a leftist is, the more they support RFK Jr. The left who were scared to learn what was happening are loudest critics. I don't think you're wrong about that. I think the people who have the most knee-jerk negative reaction to him, it is because of that issue. And I do think that is unfair to a certain extent. Not fully, but to a certain extent. Those indies already support him. What's the game? All right. Well, I think we've answered that, but thank you for the $1.99. Leon Scott, excuse me. Baby Jesus Christ could be running, and the DNC will literally just handpick Judas as the candidate. Yeah, exactly. He's missing the point. No dirty break. No point.
That's it. Thank you, Leon.
I agree.
You should do the show next week.
Yeah, you can fill in. Right?
Sick of this shit.
None of us are willing to die for the cause. The system is so corrupt that only a war between the proletariat and capitalists can solve it, a truth no one wants to, except from anti-cap. Thank you for the $4.99, my friend. Darren, excuse me, Mr. Shivani never rebuts Russell's primary point. The DNC will never allow RFK Jr. to win. Votes don't matter. This discussion was frustrating. Well, look, I understand where you're coming from there. And, this is a point that I've made to guys like Anis a lot. Anis is a brilliant guy, brilliant writer. And I think part of the trap that a lot of very smart people fall into is assuming that the average person is, at least almost as smart as they are and as capable of wrestling with these questions as they are. And that's why I told Anis, the irony is I disagree with the overall thesis that the RFK campaign is worth supporting as a Democrat, but I honestly don't really have issue with anything you wrote in the article. It's just that the audience for the article is not who you think it is. Therefore, it's going to fall on deaf ears where it matters most, which is the voters who are going to decide who the Democratic nominee is. So as long as he's competing in that field, it doesn't matter. You could write the most brilliant essay imaginable. If the politics girl fans are the ones reading it, it doesn't matter what you say. Pearls before swine. Pearls before swine. Indeed. That somebody said that last week. Somebody quoted that. Zach.
Zach, man. I mean,
another expensive
are you a PMC, man? Because how you pay?
You should spring for the membership tier where you get a super chat buffet. Yeah, exactly. He did. It's just you have Bernie luck in your ears and a load in your eyes. Take off the knee pads and get cleaned up and positive for once. Well, with a pep talk like that, how could he not be inspired?
You got to fight. Win, win, win.
Win, win, win. Tyler, Anis definitely on some hopium, but it doesn't help that we're all super skeptical after getting burned so many times. No, look, I accept that. I accept that that kind of staunch opposition can be frustrating, but in this case, I just think it's warranted. And in RFK's case, because he has so much crossover appeal and would be so successful as an independent. Like for Marianne, I don't really care because Marianne's she's basically a lib who's, for like Medicare for all, right? That's why the Vanguard love her. That's why Kaya love her. These are all liberals who are just to the left nominally of most mainstream Democrats, right?
Right.
She's not going to take off as any kind of independent because she doesn't have that crossover appeal. Her lane is she's a progressive Democrat.
Right. Right.
Whatever.
Right.
RFK has sincere crossover appeal because of all the things that Anis was saying, which is why it makes it all the more frustrating that he doesn't just go the third party route.
Right. Yeah. We're not picking on him. We're picking on the system that he's running inside.
Right. And saying, why are you making all these great points, but then running inside a system that's not going to give them any oxygen? Right. When you could just tell them to fuck off and do it on your terms. And if you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. The point I was trying to get into that conversation, and I think I failed to because I kept getting sidetracked, was even if he doesn't win as an independent, you go outside the two-party system and make a real impact as an independent. Even if you don't win, you have potential to build something from there that could eventually destroy the Democratic Party, which that has to be the goal, is to destroy the Democratic Party, not to reform it, not to remind it of its populist roots. Destroy it. Destroy it. And does RFK want to destroy the Democratic Party? I don't think so.
That's it. That's it. He is not willing to fly down the exhaust port of the Death Star and take it out.
Exactly.
That's it.
I like this nice news haircut, Keaton. Well, thank you for the harassment, Tom S. Very charming, attached to $2. Cool blue. Keaton, you look good. Short equals less maintenance. Absolutely. And it feels amazing. It's getting warm now.
All right. I'm not even kidding. There used to be a guy who was like, right out of Clerks in my neighborhood. Well, I'm not going to say his name. I don't even know if he's still alive. But the guy was such a stoner. He used to shave his head. You go, yo, man, why you shave your head? So I have more money for weed, man. So he always kept his hair that way because he didn't want to spend the $20 that he could buy a 20 bag with.
Yeah, no. Well, look, I mean, I don't buy any 20 bags, but it'd be similar rationale to me. Like, why would I pay to maintain a hairstyle?
Yeah, what do you get for 20 now? Like a seed?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's the thing. I'm unfamiliar with the market.
Back then, that was like 4 joints you would get in a 20.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm unfamiliar with the market. Always have been. I've never been a weed guy myself, but I do choose not to maintain a hairstyle partly for that reason. Like what? If you maintain a hairstyle, that's a lot of money. Well, you got to go in every 3 weeks for a haircut. At $25 a haircut, which is what this cost me. I guess inflation has set in since I last got a haircut. You can't find a haircut for less than $20 now. I used to get it for $17.
Everything kind of went up, but so did what I get paid, so it kind of evens out.
Yeah, well, lucky for you. But the haircut, I mean, yeah, a haircut every 3 weeks, $25 a week. That's $8 a week on hair. That's $400 a year on hair. No. Who do I look like? Brianna Joy Gray? I don't have that kind of money.
Yeah, you don't have that going on.
Yeah, exactly. Anti-cap. It's clear the capitalist corruption is so sophisticated and all-encompassing that the only probable option we have left to beat is an actual war. Yes, I know you said that before. Thank you for the $10.
This guy is really trying to get us demonetized.
Yeah, he's ready. He's ready to go.
Are you a plant?
Are you a plant? Fed. Congratulations on the 9K. Thank you, Shake and Bacon. We appreciate that.
Thank you, man. Don't worry. We'll get back down under that before this night is over.
Before the night's over. Thank you again for putting a spotlight on this. Thank you, Courtney. Today I had an acceptance rate of 4%. Yeah, Courtney's a driver. That's one of the things. I do want to put together a panel on rideshare and delivery gig drivers. Just a panel that we could do on the show to talk about actually what it's like to work in that field and just, advice for each other and any drivers who want to listen in on how to make it work for you. Almost no one tipped at all or only $1 on Mother's Day. Yeah, that's
fucked
awful.
Up, man.
It's fucked up. I don't know where you are from, Courtney, what your market is like, but yeah, that's brutal. Yeah, but if you want to sit in on that panel, Courtney, we would love to have that panel soon. Terrorbrate, thanks for the $5. Appreciate the donation. All right, I'm just making sure this isn't another explicit call to arms here before I put this up. Deep down, we all know grave and serious actions it's going to take from all of us to beat this fascist capitalist system, but we keep deluding ourselves that it'll come from the comment section. Well, you're true. Oh, that is true. And that
you're right about
to the
that.
irony of what we're all participating in here. Thank you for the $49.99. Just 1 cent short of the Singing Bowl threshold. I don't know if you knew that, but the Robear Network. Thank you. I once ordered food that didn't show up. Yeah, give him one. I once ordered food Beautiful. Thank you, sir. And it didn't show up. Then I checked the Citizen app and saw he got mugged and his e-bike was stolen. I called the food order app to tell them their driver got mugged, and they responded there was nothing they could do. Well, that's the thing, man. On the customer end, it can be a little bit brutal as well. But thank you very much for the $49.99. In my experience as a customer, if you just persist and just keep arguing with them, they'll give in and give you some sort of credit or something. But you got to keep on them. Just like trying to cancel your cable, right? Like if you want a lower price on your cable package, you have to threaten to quit 5 times.
And that's it.
They'll give you the lower price. Yeah. Right. Bulla 2024, Anthony Malecki. Thank you, sir. Don't blow over my sentiments. Speak on it.
Hey, man.
Well, I think
we're not blowing up. Come on, man.
I think you spoke on it pretty well yourself. The irony is we're sitting here on the internet talking about a revolution. A revolution's not going to be on the internet. Revolution's not going to be on Wi-Fi. So I think you made a good point about that yourself.
Look,
I wasn't blowing you off.
Man, I see where you're coming from. I will speak on it a little bit in a way that will not get us kicked off of YouTube. Because as Keaton has pointed out over the course of this, man, a lot of the world is already run by Skynet. You don't know what an AI is going to pick up out of what we say that flags the channel when you start getting into things like this. I personally agree with you, just broadly speaking. I think the system is beyond saving through regular order democracy. I favor the idea of trying to build alternative institutions a la Christopher Hedges. But what do I think those alternative institutions are for? I think they're there to be ready to take up the fight at the right moment. And as I have often pointed out on the show, the right wing is already doing that. And it's part of the reason that I believe the future belongs to them, because there is no equivalent ferment on the left that I see. And in regards to what I'm talking about, I would recommend an article in Vanity Fair called The New Right to see what I mean. Yes, we need to have that kind of ferment. We need to have those kinds of outside institutions to be ready for when the system collapses under its own weight. But we're not doing it. So there, I spoke on it.
There we go. Excellent. Hope we gave you your money's worth there.
There you go.
Excuse me. All right, let's keep going. We got 4 more segments to do, plus another semi-funny. So let's go with Scary Poppins suing Fox News. Russell, you want to set this up? You have a screen share. We're talking, of course, about Nina Jankowicz. So Nina Jankowicz, who you all must remember as the would-be disinformation czar appointed by Joe Biden, just to give you a brief sort of memory recall. Do you want me to let me just play this video? Yeah. Let me just do this in case anyone forgot. This will give you a sense.
It's really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how
the future might be bright for her yet. If Ron DeSantis wins, he could station her at Gitmo. Like she could get a job. She could get a job torturing prisoners by singing this song. They'll tell you anything you want to know. Just stop, please stop. So she should get on the Ron DeSantis train because he can hook her up with a gig. I think she'd do great for him.
They will save a lot of money in Ensure.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, you don't have to do anything. Right, none of that sophisticated shit, none of the force feeding, none of the upside down games. Just let her go. Give her 2 seconds with them, though. She'll break them instantly.
So this is by, I think I can legit say, friend of the show, Matt Taibbi.
Indeed, yeah.
And everybody, look, this is a paywalled article. I hope I'm not giving away the game. Subscribe. This is one of the few Substacks that I subscribe to, and it's always worth it. If you know Matt's writing, he's always hilarious and very informative. So the complaint in and of itself is pretty funny. You're a horrible person when the complaint is like funny. Like that Fox said this about her. By turns, Fox described Jankowicz as moronic, an embarrassment to her parents and employers, and a self-obsessed social media neophyte. Hosts and commentators referred to Jankowicz as inter alia, low IQ, illiterate, Miss TikTok meets America's Got No Talent, disinfo overlord, disinformation czaress, minister of truth, scary Poppins, a useful idiot, Janko halfwits, a lunatic, and the wicked witch. I mean, I don't see what they're suing about. That all sounds pretty accurate to me. So they're suing basically for defamation, although those things, even though they're in the complaint, they admit are not actually defamation. But they're claiming that Fox made false claims about her duties, about what she was doing. So part of the complaint is they're claiming that the board was an internal working group with no, and this is in bold, no operating authority or capability. The board had no ability to intervene, respond to, or prevent the spread of disinformation. So I'll just read a little bit from Matt here. On June 7th, 2022.
Yeah, I'll be right back while you're reading that. I'll be right back.
All right. On June 7, 2022, Senators Chuck Grassley of Iowa and Josh Hawley of Missouri sent a letter to Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas requesting information about the Disinformation Governance Board. As a result of that letter, the charter of the DGB was made public. So right here in the charter, it says that part of their duties is assessing and analyzing the risk that such MDM poses to Homeland Security and responding to these MDM threats and building resilience to MDM. Okay, so in their complaint, the board had nothing to do with governing disinformation outside of the body. So and this is Matt. So the Disinformation Governance Board had nothing to do with governing disinformation outside of the department, that is. Does that mean it would have been concerned with governing disinformation inside the department? So then going on with their charter, the board will serve as the departmental forum for governance of DHS policies, plans, procedures, standards, and activities pertaining to MDM that threatens Homeland Security. So basically everything that they're complaining about, Matt right here is able to demonstrate that the complaint is completely invalid. One last thing, they're complaining that the statement that she believes in censorship is incorrect. They're saying her published writing say that even in the context of a disinformation war, she believes censorship is ineffective and dangerous. So Matt takes a look at what she had to say about a German law that's rather censorious. And basically she says it's okay there because their institutions are strong enough that she feels confident that they can handle that properly. But here's another thing she said about this. At the time of this writing, both of these laws are in the early stages of implementation, and their long-term effects on social media companies' operations are unclear. However, a patchwork of laws with different aims and implemented by different capitals will not necessarily bring big tech to heel. The United States, serving as the headquarters of many social media platforms, has a unique opportunity and responsibility to institute regulations that can protect human rights and free speech around the globe. So far, this is a responsibility that we have shirked. That sounds like somebody who believes in censorship to me. Not only that, she seems to believe that the United States should lead censorship efforts around the world. So I'm going to give you Matt's great closer here. This is exactly what people feared about Jankowicz, that from a position of authority, she would deem protected but pointed speech illegitimate. She additionally doesn't seem to grasp that the Mary Poppins video was broadcast and rebroadcast precisely because her performance so completely bullseyed the general public's fears about the type of personality that might be staffing a nanny state. For her to file this scary lawsuit in an effort to show that she was falsely depicted as scary is, am I allowed to say it's funny? It is funny, isn't it? Yes, Matt. It's funny. It's definitely funny. So there you have it. They're filing a frivolous lawsuit in the wake of the Dominion lawsuit. It seems in an effort to cash in on some of that money. It seems like now the liberal class are all just attacking Fox.
Oh yeah, no, they're a shark that smells blood in the water, and they're there to get a piece of it, right? I mean, whatever's bleeding out. And it's not just about the money; it's about piling on Fox News. Obviously, this is they see a chink in the armor of Fox News, and they are going after it.
Right, her in particular. Her in particular, because she is scary. She's exactly the kind of creepy narcissist who would be appointed the minister of disinformation. And that's the kind of person who has been nursing and licking her wounds ever since the public got wind of her and made her a laughingstock. She's been sitting there nursing this anger. And now the Dominion lawsuit, I think, sparked a light bulb. Oh, I can get back at these people and vindicate myself and get revenge against everyone who laughed at my terrifying Mary Poppins impression.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, that's very obvious what this was. And, look, I mean, we talked with Anis earlier about censorship. We've talked about censorship a lot. This is a form of censorship, is using the legal system to intimidate, voices that you don't like. Right. It's not a top-down decree to shut your mouth, but it's a way of going outside the bounds or outside the norms of just like discourse and debate and like actually defeating Fox News by arguing against what it stands for. No, it's a way of going one step above that, which is, okay, we're going to go to the courts. We're going to intimidate you into some sort of like civil lawsuit, into some payout so that you censor yourselves moving forward.
Well, and there's, as Matt demonstrated, there's absolutely no grounds for this lawsuit. Like, this is the definition of a frivolous lawsuit.
Right, exactly. All right, let's knock out these 3 super chats. Eric Torres, thanks for the $5. I'll vote RFK if and when he crosses the Rubicon. There you go. That's positive. See, Zach? Positive.
Yeah, that's very positive.
Very, very positive. Very encouraging. Thank you, Terry, for the $20 super sticker. That's very generous. Thank you so much.
Grazie.
Leprechaun Alley, thank you for the $19.99. I always made shot on Mother's Day too, even in fine dining. Made shit on Mother's Day too, even in fine dining as a server. Yeah, man. That's interesting.
Well, actually, as somebody who has worked in those kinds of jobs, a lot of times you will do really badly on holidays because of the money that people blew on the holiday. They're thinking that way, and they try to save the money on you, on what they're going to tip you.
Right. I picked up a little Mother's Day breakfast because my wife just wanted to eat home, but she wanted like a breakfast from like a diner, So I went to pick it up, and the diner was packed. I mean, the diner had a line all the way to the door. I mean, it had to be an hour waiting for a table in there. So, yeah, if what you're saying is true, I don't know what the rationale is, why the tips are bad on holidays, especially Mother's Day. That's weird.
That's my theory. That's my theory. They blew money on stuff, and now they don't want to spend anymore.
Yeah, that could be it. All right, let's keep pressing ahead here. So, this is an interesting story. This is a preview of what we're going to talk about a little bit with Norman Finkelstein on Tuesday. But Gavin Newsom, a while back, made big news when he was appointing this group to study the issue of reparations to the descendants of African slaves. He was very proud to come out with this announcement that he was forming this committee, this group, to study the issue and come to a determination about whether or not reparations are owed, and if so, how much is the bill per person. So let's hear him first touting the formation of this study group.
In the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd and numerous others at the hands of police, millions took to the streets. You know this well.
Sorry, in case I wasn't clear about this. So this was in 2021.
Yeah.
So here we go.
This country and here in California, calling for an end to the violence. And as they continue to speak out to demand justice and equality, I heard those voices. And I had the privilege to travel all across the state to listen to our youth, our young folks, faith leaders and community leaders. And I'm grateful for what they shared with me and for their passion and, more importantly, a sense of real urgency. That's why I was honored to sign in September of last year Assembly Bill 3121, which established this task force to study reparations for slavery. And with this bill, we're bringing together some of the best, the brightest minds to chart a path forward to move to a more equal California.
Equal California. Task force, that's what it was. I always forget what the bullshit name they call these things. Task force, not study group, committee. Task force. A reparations task force. Okay, so they came out with their findings, and yeah, the bill was pretty high. They're talking about like $1.2 million per person who is the descendant of African slaves. It's a pretty high number. People who know this issue very, very well, Marcel Dixon, friend of the show, really, articulates the case for reparations in a very, very powerful way. He's the guy who kind of went semi-viral when he had that confrontation with Marianne Williamson at the South Carolina town hall, where he said, yeah, the number is really about $70 trillion. All right, now I have no reason to doubt his number there. He knows the issue far, far more than I do. Let's say it's $10 trillion, right? Let's say it's that low. Whether it's 10 trillion, 5 trillion, even a trillion, what ought to be pretty obvious from the party that would not even give you paid family leave when they had the power to do so, is that they're not giving you reparations. They're not going to enact reparations. And here we go to, in this segment, Exhibit B, headline, Newsom declines to publicly support reparations payment recommended by the California Task Force. He issues a quote here. Dealing with legacy is about much more than cash payments. Oh, no, it sounds like what you're saying is it's about much less than cash payments.
We don't want to do anything so crude and crass as to give them money.
Right, exactly.
That would cheapen the entire effort.
Well, that's kind of what he says here. Many of the recommendations put forward by the task force are critical action items we've already been hard at work addressing. Oh, so then what'd you need the task force for? Breaking down barriers to vote. Oh, so we're not going to give reparations. We're going to make it easier for them to vote for us anyway, even though we're not giving reparations. Bolstering resources to address hate. Oh. Enacting sweeping law enforcement and justice reforms to build trust and safety, strengthening economic mobility, all while investing billions to root out disparities and improve equity in housing, education, healthcare, and well beyond. What's amazing about this
you gotta do that in your Kyle voice.
All while investing billions to root out disparities and improve equity in housing, education, healthcare, and well beyond. What's amazing about this is that he appoints this task force on reparations. They come out with the findings, which is like, yeah, we owe reparations and we owe a lot of reparations. He comes back with, well, what we owe is about more than just money. And then he goes on to list the exact Democrat Party platitudes that he would have recited before the reparations task force. Like, he comes out with the exact line of crap that he and Democrats like him have been parroting for decades. As if it's going to be lost on people that, wait a minute, if you were just going to come out and say this anyway, we have to address hate and counter hate and invest in a more equitable future and economic opportunity. And what was the other thing here? Breaking down barriers to vote. Like, if you were just going to come out and say that anyway, how ridiculous was it to appoint this task force in the first place? I mean, it's really amazing that you would touch an issue like this, which you know is a controversial issue, you know is a very emotionally charged issue for very, very good reason. And then you would come out and you would try to sell people on this same line of bullshit as if this issue was never raised. Like, he's just ignoring the fact that this issue was raised by people who really care about this, as they should. And the real reason why the Democrats will not give reparations, the real reason why you're never going to get reparations through, as anti-cap in the chat would be very, very happy to hear me say, through regular order democracy, is because it's not even just about the money. Let's say it's 70 trillion. Let's say it's 50 trillion. Let's say it's 10 trillion. Once the political system admits that it owes the descendants of African slaves trillions of dollars, It admits that the whole economy that they have been touting for the last, whatever, do a mental math, 240 something years has been a complete fugazi, has been a complete sham. What you're saying at that point is we basically built this country on a credit card that we refuse to pay off, right? It's like going on vacation at a 5-star hotel and just putting it on a charge card and never paying it off. Well, you acted like you were rich and high on the hog, but you're not. You just did that with fake money that you're never going to actually pay back. That's what this economy is. That's what we admit this economy is once we admit that, yeah, we owe the people who built it $50 trillion, $70 trillion that we're not going to pay them. And they can admit that. No political party will ever admit that.
No matter how you feel about reparations, whether you agree with it, don't agree with it, have theories about how it should be done, want a form of it, not cash payments, they're not doing any of it. And the Democratic Party specifically uses it the way that they use identity politics and their cute buzzwords like intersectionality, and they use it just to manipulate your vote without ever actually doing anything. And it also allows them to present themselves to their PMC base like they're way out to the radical left on the side of justice, which allows them to feel good about themselves for supporting the party. Otherwise, it would just be too transparently the gay or Republican Party, right? They have to take up some things like this. But they're never going to do them. But they will allow discussion of this kind of thing because it's so legislatively impossible. Like, it would never get to a point beyond this, beyond a study group. So they don't mind stirring up talk of this. They don't like talk about Medicare for all. They don't like talk about free college because that's much more doable. That has a lot less obstacles in front of it, and you have a much broader base of support for it. So they'll talk about reparations all day, even going so far as to set up a study committee. But any time that it comes up, this is how it's going to end, with platitudes, with excuses. They're never actually going to do that for you. It's a shell game, like everything else with the Democrats.
Right. Exactly. And in this case, I mean, this, once again, I don't want to keep, especially since we're going to clip these as different segments, I don't want to keep going back to the sort of debate that we had with Anis at the top of the show. But the fact that Gavin Newsom can go out there after the task force recommends cash reparations to the descendants of African slaves, the fact that he can go up there after this task force has, given him their findings and come back with breaking down barriers to vote, bolstering resources to address hate, and enacting justice reforms to build trust and safety, that just shows what utter contempt these politicians have for their own voters. Because how you can feel that's acceptable to just go out there and give them literally the same thing their politicians have been telling them for 40 years about this issue that for good reason is extremely emotionally charged and extremely important to the people who brought it to the table in the first place. They don't give a shit. That you would go up there and just throw out the slop, just grab the house vodka from under the bar and just pour a huge club and say, here, drink this. We're not even going to give you the mid-shelf shit. We're just going to give you the swill. That's what we think of you. Reparations? No, we're going to break down barriers. Don't like it? Go fuck yourself. Who are you going to vote for? Donald Trump? That's what they think of their voters. And here's the real red pill, folks. They're right to feel that way because their voters do not hold them accountable for treating them that way. Why would Gavin Newsom feel any differently about his voters? What reason does he have to respect them? None, because they don't hold him account no matter what, ever.
All right. And I'm also, as a little bit of a preview to our
Tuesday's interview,
I'm going to read a little bit from Norm for any of you who might have forgotten why the Democrats love having the issue of reparations out there to use as a cudgel that they'll never actually be called to account on. Sanders advocated universal programs that would benefit all the have-nots. It was in the nature of things, however, that African Americans would be the prime beneficiaries of Bernie's platform, as they were least able to afford health insurance and higher education and most in need of jobs. What we should be talking about is making massive investments in rebuilding our cities and creating millions of decent paying jobs and making public colleges and universities tuition free. Basically targeting our federal resources to the areas where it is needed the most. And where it is needed the most is in impoverished communities, often African American and Latino. Still, the woke crowd hounded Bernie with the question, do you support black reparations? As if answering no proved he was a racist. If he did reply in the negative, it was because answering yes would have estranged his potential supporters in the white working class. If woke Democratic Party hacks could afford to answer yes, it was because they had already written off a wide swath of white workers. It was a lose-lose proposition for Sanders. If he came out in favor of reparations, it would drastically shrink the coalition he hoped to build. If he came out against them, he would stand accused of a blind spot on race. Blind spot was the chimera of black reparations touted by Democratic Party con artists who knew full well that a substantive reparations bill was dead on arrival, really to be preferred over the prospect of free health care, free higher education, and a living wage job. It might be contended that neither program was a realistic possibility, but it's not an accident that the Democratic Party woke elite, hell-bent against wealth redistribution, entertained Coates' proposal, they're talking about Ta-Nehisi Coates, while denouncing Sanders' platform. So, we'll be speaking more about that with our guest on Tuesday. But that's why they keep dangling reparations out there. It's a great weapon for them to use against anyone who wants to talk about class or universal health care, things that you're going to need a broad base of support to execute. You bring up this very divisive issue that the African American community feels very strongly about, use it to disqualify anyone who makes these kinds of proposals, and then put together a bullshit study committee to pretend you actually give a crap about it, something you're never actually gonna have to do.
Exactly. Very, very well said. All right, let's move right along here. We're coming down the home stretch, folks. 2.5 segments, basically, left to go. Let's do Elon's new Twitter CEO. So, Elon Musk has named a new CEO of Twitter, advertising executive Linda Yaccarino, who spent 20 years at Turner Broadcasting Network and later at NBC Universal. Now, this pick for CEO has been controversial because I know a lot of people have pointed out, rightfully so, that, you know, she's one of these very connected, sort of, you know, integrated types. She has, you know, done some work with the WEF, and she obviously, you know, NBC, Turner Broadcasting, CNN. This is sort of an establishment type for a sort of renegade like Elon Musk, is it not? Right? And so let's go to an interview that he conducted with her. This was just about probably a month back, maybe a little bit less than a month back, where it seems that they are sort of vetting each other, right? The subtext of this interview is that, like, he's maybe considering hiring her and she's maybe considering feeling him out. Does she want to work for him? So let's take a look at this segment.
So you've got a massive platform. You have a vision that is a spectrum of just daily open source conversation. And they can conduct their lives, their business, their commerce, whatever they can do on your platform. That's a pretty big vision. But in the middle should be advertising opportunity. That sounds like a great opportunity. I can talk about my brand, I can get my customers to communicate, and then they could also buy stuff. That sounds pretty good, right?
You'll be able to buy things just directly on Twitter. One click, boom, done.
But they need to feel that there is an opportunity for them to influence what you're building, that vision. What we're doing here, whether it's me trying to push and prod you on your tweets. For example, you've said you probably shouldn't tweet.
This is a great example of how business people talk, right? Like when they're behind closed doors. It's a poker game, right? Like what they're saying is somewhat meaningful, but it's all in the subtext, right? It's like, yeah, listen, we want to do business, but it's not just that we want to be able to list products on your platform or advertise, but we want to influence what you're doing. Meaning, like, are you going to embarrass us? Are you going to make this? Are you going to make this a situation where the juice isn't worth the squeeze for us, or can we trust you to play ball here?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, exactly. And she's doing it. You're right. It's a code because she's bringing up his personal behavior,
his personal behavior and tweets.
Are we going to be able to do business with you? Are you going to be reasonable going forward?
Right. Right, because it's not enough to be able to sell people a pair of sneakers on the site. We have to, there has to be something in it for us beyond that. We have to be able to make sure that the brand of Twitter is not going to become toxic where it bites your advertisers in the ass no matter how many shoes they sell.
Yeah,
right?
And it's not just about your personal tweeting pedos in the middle of the night.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. And it's not just about your personal tweeting habits, but like how much of this shit are you going to allow? How much shit talking are you going to allow on the platform? Let's keep hearing it.
After 3 a.m.
Well, I've got
probably good advice.
Let me just so you're saying, can you stop tweeting so late at night? Meaning, don't be so
after
crazy.
3 a.m.
Well, I've got
probably good advice for all of us.
I've gotten myself into trouble a few times.
I'm very aware of those. So after 3 a.m., you travel all over the world. Lord knows how you handle time zones in space. Will you commit to be a little more specific and not tweet after 3 a.m.? People in this room would like to see that. It'll make them feel more confident.
I will aspire to tweet less after 3 a.m. But I mean, it is important that, if I were to say, yes, you can influence me, that would be wrong. That would be very wrong. Because that would be a diminishment of freedom of speech.
But I want to be specific about influencing. It's more of an open feedback loop for the advertising experts in this room to help develop Twitter into a place where they will be excited about investing more money, product development, ad safety, content moderation. That's what the influence is.
Yeah, I think it's totally cool to say that you want to have your advertising appear in certain places in Twitter and not in other places. But it is not cool to try to say what Twitter will do. And if that means losing advertising dollars, we lose it. But freedom of speech is paramount.
Some people like that answer in that room. It's an interesting exchange, and given the fact that he ended up going with her is even more interesting. Because ultimately, look, the idea that he was going to be able to build Twitter into this universal app, right? I think he's called it the X app, where you could do everything. Right. The one-stop shop for everything. Shopping, social media, video, content, things like that. The idea that you're going to be able to do that using a subscription-only model was always really a fantasy. Like, you were going to have to bring in ad dollars because that's where you're going to generate, the kind of revenue and the kind of capital that you're going to need to build this up into what you envision it to be. Now, look, what Yaccarino says there, as much as she's not my type, obviously, but it is true that you're going to have to bring in advertisers to do this. And if the advertisers are going to be sticklers about where their ads appear, then that is a consideration that you're going to have to make. I mean, that's just the price of doing business, right? Like, so when you advocate for a less censorious space, be it YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, you are advocating for a paradigm shift perhaps away from ad dollars, as Elon seemed pretty willing to recognize there. Like, hey, if we lose ad money over our commitment to free speech, so be it. So I understand that. However, there is an element of this, if you build it, they will come, right? If you are able to build something that is a true breakthrough, and you make your platform a place where they just have to be because that's where the action is, at that point, they will be more lenient with what you allow or when you tweet or whatever, how they frame it in that sort of coded language. Because ultimately, these companies want to be where the action is. Now, if they can control the kind of space where the action is, that's even better. But, if he is able to attract them by just sheer force and sheer quantity of numbers, say, look at what we've got here. You have to be here. You can't not be here. Right? That's why we're on YouTube. We're on YouTube because we have to fucking be on YouTube. That's where all you guys are. You know what I mean? So, like, you create a kind of space and a kind of incentive by just building it. A lot of these advertisers will fall in line. Now, some won't. Yeah, there's a calculation to be made there. Absolutely. But, this is why we've said, as many criticisms as we have for Elon Musk, he's the only guy who could have taken a chance like this and tried to do something like this with that social media platform, because he's the only guy who doesn't need maximum ad dollars. Not to say he doesn't want as much as he can get, but he doesn't need it. He can go without. Whereas, who else could really say that? Who would even dream of taking a chance like this?
Right. I think it's very tricky, because Twitter wound up getting stuck right in the middle of a culture war. This culture war, I think, is heating up now, as relatively trivial as it is. I think the Bud Light boycott is significant in terms of what it says about where we are culturally. So you're going to have this culture war. You have this ongoing culture war between, what's called the right wing now, but also civil libertarians, free speech, and so on. And this authoritarian left that is not confident that it can win a debate since Trump won in 2016. That shook their confidence in the idea that they can persuade with argument. And ever since, they have wanted to control debate and discourse with censorship. And Twitter has become this thorn in their side since Elon Musk took it over, where on the one hand, you have all these people who have spent all these years, all these libs who built up hundreds of thousands of followers on there, and they just can't bear to give it up. But it infuriates them that Elon Musk is running it this way. So as the election gets more and more heated, once it becomes more and more obvious that a Republican is going to win, whether that be Trump or DeSantis, that's how I believe it's going to play out. Do they get the wherewithal to really try to crush Twitter as part of that, of everything that they hate about, what's happening in the political sphere? It's possible. Dorsey is basically making a Twitter clone. Do they have the wherewithal to go over there and start all over again? If they get upset enough, if they get enough of a January 6th mad on going and focus it on Twitter, it's possible. You also have to remember part of what's going on with these corporations, and it's part of why Elon Musk is speaking out about it. He's not stupid. ESG. These big financial firms that invest huge amounts of investor money and pension money, like Vanguard and BlackRock, they have these ESG scores. If you wonder why a lot of companies like Disney seem to be making decisions that are really bad for their profitability, it's partly to hook in investors through their ESG scores, how diverse their staff is, how environmentally friendly they are. So Twitter has to worry about that in terms of not stock price. They went private. They don't have to worry about getting that kind of investment. They have to worry about that with these corporations being willing to advertise if Vanguard and BlackRock give them a really bad ESG score. This is part of why people like Elon Musk have been speaking out about ESG as a scam. And it is a scam. But when you put all that together, yes, he's making a move where he's trying to have it both ways, as we discussed earlier offline. He's trying to have maybe an advertising area that's more safe and cleaned up and without the so many neo-Nazis or that kind of thing, and then he's trying to have more of a free speech zone as a subscription model. I just don't know that it's going to work, especially as this election heats up and it becomes increasingly clear that the Republicans are going to take back the White House. The liberals are likely to strike out in the areas where they still have power, institutional power.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see where that goes. I mean, I think, you could definitely be right about that. But in terms of just like this pick, look, he was going to pick someone like her. I mean, he was not going to go out there and get Milo Yiannopoulos to be the CEO of Twitter. Like the idea that
would have been funny.
Like part of the reason, look, he puts this poll up that says, how many people think I should step down as CEO? I will abide by the result, Vox Populi, right? Most people said they wanted him to step down. The reason people wanted him to step down is not so he could appoint someone just like him as his replacement. No, they wanted him to pick someone more milquetoast, many of whom wanted that for the wrong reasons, obviously. But, he was going to pick someone who the advertisers felt comfortable with. Like that's kind of the point of doing it. It's not a surprise to me that he went with someone like this, because you have to, he's thinking, I have to make these people feel like they're in good hands. He still obviously owns the company. He's still going to have a huge say in how it goes. But this was sort of the inevitable pick. Like, I'm not surprised. I didn't know who this Yacarino woman was, so I wouldn't have picked her. But if someone like her, yeah, that was pretty obvious the direction that he was going to go.
Yeah, I think he's trying to have it both ways. He's trying to thread the needle. It's just when you get on their list with Joe Rogan and all of their demon Trump and all of their demons and all of their bugaboos and their Alex Joneses, and when you get on their radar like that, they're never done with you. And really, I mean, as they see themselves losing power, which I believe is going to be the scenario in 2024, as they're looking at the polling and looking at losing power, I think they're going to lash out at everything that they perceive as part of this, basket of deplorables, and Twitter has definitely fallen into that category. I don't think hiring her is really going to take it off their radar that way.
All right, so we have one more segment that we're going to do, but before we do that, obviously, this is just a funny bit of news here that came across the wire. Now, a bit of skepticism. Was this indeed a full-body orgasm that a woman had at the L.A. Philharmonic concert? Witnesses offer conflicting accounts. It wasn't clear to me based on the audio that was released, just a little audio clip of a woman letting out this very sort of loud moan during a concert where the orchestra actually stopped. Wasn't actually clear to me what exactly it was. You guys can listen for yourself and see what you think. That's it.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, it sounds close. I mean, that's not the noise you make when you stub your toe. That's more, ow. This was, it was like a crescendo, stuff like that. But there is another audio clip which leaves much less room for debate. Maybe this is a trend that this woman set off, but
I think this was a response. This guy, actually, his name is Sidney Applebaum. He's from the Upper West Side. This happened at David Geffen Hall, which is part of the whole Lincoln Center complex. So this one, I don't think leaves any room to the imagination. I think his wife said, actually, that's the most action I've heard out of him in 20 years.
Yeah, let's take a listen. This one seems a little bit less mysterious.
Oh yeah. Oh baby.
Oh yeah, that's.
Oh yeah.
Papa lights.
Right in the middle there. Wow.
Just like that. More timpani. Oh God. Oh God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's definitely.
Yeah. Oh, you dirty conductor. Ah!
quite a finish.
That's an easy one.
Oh, God. Does anybody have a Kleenex?
Oh, Kleenex.
Oh,
well, definitely.
God. Oh,
Yeah,
so
okay.
definitely. So that settles it.
No
That
mystery
settles
about
it.
that one.
So, I mean, that's a new trend sweeping the nation. You know,
Yeah.
people getting off at concerts. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
Hey,
Indeed.
Man. Hey, life's short, man. Whatever makes you happy.
Beethoven, Tchaikovsky. Who knew they could bring it out of you like that?
I mean, if anything it would be the 9th.
It will be the 9th. That's true.
Yeah.
The Ode to Joy, as it's called. All right, folks. One more segment of the evening. Thank you for sticking around with us. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Help us stay above that 9,000 mark so we don't embarrass ourselves, huh? Where are we at now? 9,009. There we go. All right, let's keep going.
All
keep
right.
going. Thank you, folks.
All
Thank
right.
you, folks. Thank you.
All right, and I don't even think we have any segments coming up that's going to make people unsubscribe.
No,
not anybody who would be here in the first place.
No, that's true. That's true. We have some super chats. We're going to get to those after this next segment because we know it is getting late, and this is the one that I'm sure a lot of you guys tuned in for here. So the Majority Report crew got a message from a viewer asking about the Tara Reade allegations against Joe Biden, assumingly in response to the E. Jean Carroll civil rape suit that she brought against Donald Trump. And here's what these guys had to say about Tara Reade's story.
And when Joe Biden was a senator in the early 90s, he raped Tara Reade. I know that is the accusation, indeed.
I think that, to be honest, guys, there's been some holes poked in that story.
Yes, I mean, Tara Reade has some serious credibility issues, it seems to me. But
which one?
Do you think it'll become an issue again for the Democrats in 2024? I don't think so, no.
It's funny
if
how
Trump
like,
wins again?
This is the exact conversation that you would have in 2016, where it's like, would the rape allegations against Bill Clinton become an issue? No, I don't think so. You just a very smug. That's the total lib response. I got that from a lot of people back. That was back when I was on Facebook arguing with people. Yeah, no.
Oh, it was. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in our audience experienced this. It was fucking mind-boggling because these people 10 minutes before, believe women. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And as soon as it was Tara Reade, you saw those same exact people. You know, unfortunately, some women lie about it. You know,
it wasn't even that. It was actually worse than that. It was, yes, believe all women. And then when it looked doubtful that Biden would be the nominee, they were like, oh, yeah, this Tara Reade story, this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it looked like Biden was going to be the nominee, that's when they turned on the, they lie sometimes. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that was the
no,
timeline.
they were bringing out all the women. He buried his schnoz in their hair. But, you know, they were covering it until it became inconvenient.
Right, until
You're
it was looking like,
right.
oh, we're actually stuck with this guy? Oh, okay, I guess.
Well, that's
guess
just
the
like
women
the
are lying.
dementia. You know, you have Andrea Mitchell talked about how he's not,
Right, exactly.
He's not all there anymore. Cory Booker said it. All of a sudden, you became an ableist if you said anything like that. What are you talking about? You're an ageist.
Exactly.
I could see a similar sort of cultural type of reckoning playing itself out.
Oh, with Trump?
Yeah, if Trump wins again. Is that what the question was?
No, I think it was, do you think Tara Reade will become an issue for the Democrats in 2024?
I said at the time, like, I unfortunately, I think the calculus is you need more than one accuser for one of these guys. Like, I think...
No, that's not the calculus. The calculus is the same as it's always been, which
That's
is
fine.
When it's a politician that you like and want to win, the woman's lying. When it's a politician you don't like and want to lose, we have to believe the woman. That's been the calculus for decades now. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. These quote unquote progressives are not going to change anything. It's the same exact formulation.
Yeah, what was so disgusting about it, and just continues to be, is they're pulling out something that women have fought against for decades. I remember when Jodie Foster's movie The Accused came out, it stimulated this big public conversation about the nuts and sluts defense. How, it doesn't matter what somebody's, personal life is like. That's something they always deploy to discredit rape victims. And they went right to it. They went right to the nuts and sluts. That's exactly what they're doing here, because there's nothing in her story that doesn't add up in terms of like timeline where she.
Well, we'll get into that. Yeah.
A lot of corroborating evidence. So what you're talking about is the smear job that was done on her in the press. She couldn't pay rent. She was broke. She had some issues. Like, what does that have to do with a rape accusation?
Right. Right.
I think like even if Tara Reade, like, and I haven't followed that super closely, but like I don't think people are going to believe one person, which is a horrible thing, like a thing. But just generically, I don't think it will be if it's just Tara Reade again.
And she has credibility issues. This is
we covered it at the time.
Yes.
And
I was very deferential to the accusation at the time, but then we have new information, and I just think that's important.
When he wasn't going to be the nominee?
Ouch.
Was that when? You were deferential.
Right. We were very
it?
deferential to the accusation at the time when we wanted either Bernie or Warren, to be the nominee. Once he became the nominee, then of course. I remember when Chris Hayes brought that up, that we have to start taking this allegation seriously. The libs within minutes. I wrote a whole article about it. They had trending the hashtag fire Chris Hayes, right? They brought Joe Biden on Morning Joe. They gave Mika the interview, so it looked great to have a woman interviewing him about this. Yeah. And that was clearly a setup
as somebody who married her abuser, who better?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Well, what did Michelle Wolf say? There was a Me Too that worked out.
A Me Too that worked out. Yeah.
Exactly. So he gets to vehemently deny it, and then all the liberals they watch it on MSC. Oh yeah, no, we looked into it. Turns out he said it didn't happen, so I guess it didn't happen.
Well,
right?
Clearly.
Now listen.
Clearly, in spite of decades of creepy footage of him pawing underage girls,
right?
It's impossible that he might have done something like that.
Yeah, he did that. There was that woman, I don't recall her name, who came out that he came up to her, with the hair smelling and all that shit. But anyway,
listen. I'm sorry, man. This should be okay to say. Who goes up and says to children's fathers, "Oh, how old is she? I thought she was 30. Keep her locked up until she's 25." Who even says things like this?
Yeah, it's just
with
weird.
an 11-year-old girl. And there are montages of him doing this. That was his stock line with children, female children. That was his stock line. "Oh, I thought she was 25. Oh, you better keep her locked up till she's 30. It's creepy. It's weird. Why are you even talking about a child that way? So I'm sorry, man. Just one more thing that makes it very plausible that he would be even more predatory in private.
Black Freud, thank you for becoming a member. We appreciate that very much.
Thank
my
you.
Friend. Thank you so much. Signed up at the Coddler level. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate that. I had to check my phone to see what tier you signed up for because it only tells us when we get a new member. But yeah, look, the question of credibility has to do with a standard that's keeps being changed, right? They don't apply a single standard of credibility when it comes to cases against people they like versus cases against people they don't like, right? Now, full disclosure, obviously, we have interviewed Tara Reade ourselves. When we interviewed her before we went on the air, she says, "Oh, it's cool. I feel like I know you guys," which means she obviously watches the show from time to time. There's a better than 50-50 chance she will see this segment that we're doing right now. And I'll just say this. No one except for Tara herself and Joe Biden can be sure of what exactly happened. But what we can talk about is a standard of credibility that was established fairly recently by Democrats and liberals themselves. So here's a clip of Jeff Flake calling for a delay in the Kavanaugh confirmation vote because he wanted the FBI to investigate the claims of Christine Blasey Ford to see if there was any corroborating testimony that they could find, i.e. people who Ford told people who she would have told about the incident. Right. In other words, when Kavanaugh did this to her, she told her friend, and her friend can come forward now after the FBI gets in touch and say, yes, she told me at the time that this happened to her. So let's hear Jeff Flake. This was fall of 2018.
I have been speaking with a number of people on the other side. We've had conversations ongoing for a while with regard to making sure that we do due diligence here. And I think it would be proper to delay the floor vote for up to, but not more than 1 week, in order to let the FBI continue to do an investigation limited in time and scope to the current allegations that are there, and limited in time to no more than 1 week. And I will vote to advance the bill to the floor with that understanding.
All right. So what he's saying there is we're going to let the FBI look to see if there are other people who can corroborate the testimony of Christine Ford. Now, it turns out, and this is somewhat of an aside, but just to make my sort of position known about both of these cases, turns out it came out in 2021 that the FBI actually found quite a few leads on the various sort of abuses of Brett Kavanaugh that were suppressed by the Trump administration. But if you notice, what Flake says there is that he's going to allow a week to investigate claims related to this specific story. In other words, they're not going to go sort of look for other claims that may be out there. So just for the record, I believe that Christine Blasey Ford was telling the truth about Brett Kavanaugh. But that is somewhat sort of neither here nor there when it comes to the question of a standard of credibility. So that's the standard. That was what I was hoping they'd find something. I didn't want Kavanaugh on the court. I was like, yeah, hopefully they find something from someone she knows who could say, yes, at the time this happened, she told me about it. And here's how here's what she told me. And then you say, okay, does that match what she said under oath this past week, right? That's what they were looking for. Well, in Tara Reade's case, you have pretty much exactly that. We've all seen this clip probably a few times, but let me just play this once again. This is Tara Reade's mother calling into the Larry King show, talking about her daughter having an experience with a senator.
Hello. Yes, hello. I'm wondering what a staffer would do besides go to the press in Washington. My daughter has just left there after working for a prominent senator and could not get through with her problems at all. And the only thing she could have done was go to the press, and she chose not to do it out of respect for him. Or she had a story to tell, but out of respect for the person she worked for, she didn't tell it. That's true.
That's true. Okay, so there you go.
Right.
So again, according
so you don't get better corroboration than that.
Right. So according to your own standards of what constitutes a credible claim that we just established with the whole Brett Kavanaugh hearing, Tara Reade's claim by those standards is 100 times more credible than Christine Blasey Ford's. And I say this personally as someone who believes both of them, right? But just objectively looking at it, if you're going to say, well, we needed corroboration of Christine Blasey Ford's story and couldn't get it, and isn't it a shame we couldn't get it because we couldn't nail him, then how could you look at Tara Reade's story, watch that clip of her mother calling into Larry King and say, well, no, I don't think this happened. Well, that doesn't meet my standard. And there's only one word to describe that, and that is obviously hypocrisy. I mean, it's not even worth saying it's so obvious, but I just don't know how you work yourself out of that logic trap.
Well, and as I recall from when I was preparing for that interview, she has at least 2 corroborating witnesses as well that she told this.
Yeah, she has more. Yeah, she has more than that. Yeah.
More than that, right?
Yeah. That's the only one that's easily findable on Twitter because we can just pull the video. Yeah, but yeah, she has more than that.
Yeah. So they never explain what's wrong with her credibility. That's how a smear works. So if we have anyone left who's like a Majority Report stan, I think most of those people have fled. If you're still watching these guys, ask yourself why. Because they just showed you who they are. These guys are fucking just media figures. You might as well just watch corporate media for all the integrity they have. They are fucking establishment shills who throw out a few progressive platitudes to convince you that they're on the left, These people are fucking scum of the earth. They do not care about what the truth is. And motherfucker, people keep going, oh, debate Sam. Hey, Sam, if you're watching, come on anytime. We'd be happy to debate you about Tara Reade's claims.
All righty. Well, I think that is everything we have for the night. What a show. What a show tonight. Big show. But let's do our super chat.
Very big show.
Very big show. And a very big show on Tuesday. We're not going to be back. I mean, we are going to be back Thursday as well. But bonus stream this Tuesday, May 16th, 8 p.m. with Norman Finkelstein. Make sure you tune in for that. We're going to do some super chats before we leave, obviously. Robin Gibson, thanks for the $2. Worked with election protection 20 years in L.A., DNC. Okay, I don't know if you finished that one, but I get where you were going with it. Thank you. Franklin, thanks for the $9.99. Gruesome Newsom needs to do a study to figure out if slavery was bad. Yeah, well, that seems like the kind of study he thought he was setting up, right? Right. Let me set up a study that will allow me to come out here and give the same speech that every Democrat's been given for the past 30 years in response, and hope that is good enough.
They finished the study too early, I think. They weren't supposed to finish it until after the election.
Until after the election, right? Yeah, exactly.
They kind of fucked them with that.
This was supposed to be a 10-year study.
Yeah.
Supposed to be a 10-year study.
Should black people get reparations? Yes! Here you go!
Yeah, right, exactly. If they do reparations, that will incite a war. Well, look, I mean, Meteor Dreams, this is the real challenge surrounding this issue, is that there is so much resentment in this country about just general subsidies for poor people, right? Not even, I'm not talking about racial groups even. I'm just talking about people are so touchy and so sort of aggrieved by the idea that any of their tax dollars go towards helping anyone, who has trouble helping themselves. This is politically an extremely tough sell, but the reason it is an extremely tough sell is because, as Marcel Dixon says very, very plainly, I mean, look, I was on the fence as to whether this was worth fighting for until I talked to him. And when I talked to him, he convinced me pretty quickly that it was, because he says, look, other groups have been paid reparations, right? Other groups have been paid reparations. They've been given land grants, right? They've been given money. And so it is just anti-black racism that prevents this issue from catching on to the point where people have some sort of problem with it. This is dollars and cents. It's a debt that's owed. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And so, and that's one of the reasons why he got frustrated with Marianne Williamson, because she was saying, yeah, we need reparations, but she only wanted to do $1 trillion, which is a drop in the bucket. And so he's saying, look, if you're going to make a moral argument that's going to be very difficult to sell no matter what your dollar sign is, no matter what your dollar figure is, because it's so emotionally charged, there's just so much resentment attached to it, even if the number is $1 trillion. He says, as long as you're going to make this argument that this is warranted, why not get the numbers right so we could really have the conversation instead of have this sort of pussyfooted version of the conversation where the goal is something that even if you could realize it, like if you could do reparations for only $1 trillion, at that point, I'm sure a lot of people who would be on the receiving end of those reparations said, well, it's not even worth doing for $1 trillion because then we can't do it again and get what we actually are owed, right? It's like the ACA, right? We wanted Medicare for all. Obama gave us the ACA, and now the Democrats are afraid to ever have another healthcare debate again because they figure, well, we gave you what we could with the ACA. Take it and be happy. That's what will happen with reparations if you try and do it for a low ball amount like $1 trillion. That's why a lot of the reparations activists are saying, well, if you're going to do this, you may as well do it right because it's going to be a really hard sell no matter what the number is. So why not get the number at least close to correct as opposed to coming in with this $1 trillion figure? That's just ultimately insultingly low. I mean, it's obviously, you're talking about 2.5 centuries of forced labor combined with, I don't want to get to a point where I upset people, but we all know what it was. Rape, murder, torture. $1 trillion for that? Come on. It's crazy. Robin, thanks for the $2. Appreciate it. Nicole, thanks for the $2. What's with my limit of words on Super Chat? I don't know. I know there's a 200 character limit, but I don't know beyond that what that's about. I know it's 200 characters, so you might have to split it up into a couple of different chats. You know, you don't have to do 2 super chats, obviously, but if you split it up, we can go back and find the one. Because these are timestamped. The nice thing about StreamYard now is that these super chats are timestamped. So if there's something that comes right after, we can go back to that time and find it. Axel, Brandon, let's go, Brandon. One of the OG supporters back from the Facebook days. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the $5. But he's with the Biden-Harris party.
Yeah, I saw that video. That was so cringe.
They had the gall to put out a Biden-Harris party video. The mask is off. Yeah, that was a really cringe one. You're talking about Newsom, I assume. Yeah. I'm Team Biden-Harris. Apparently, they couldn't cuck Bernie even into doing that one. It's like, nope, this is where I draw the line.
That's the kind of thing as a politician that wakes you up at 2:00 in the morning asking what you're doing with your life.
Yeah, right, exactly. That you would put that in there. Indeed. Bravo, Keaton. The best reparations take I've heard from anyone who is not black and righteously indignant. Russell, too. Everything would be exposed about the American scheme. Well, thank you, Black Freud, and I appreciate that. Oh, yeah, that's right. We did that segment. Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah, this is a long show. I didn't realize that was a half hour ago, that reparations segment.
Yeah, we did an interview and a full show, man.
Yeah, an interview and a show. Double header tonight.
Hardest working men in show business.
The hardest working men in show business. The James Browns of YouTube here. No irony about going after Bernie for reparations. You're talking about the fact that he whipped out on that. Yeah, no, I think what Finkelstein wrote is true, and that's why. That's why he didn't touch that. He didn't touch that, frankly, because he didn't have the courage to do that because he was afraid that it was just too much of a third rail. And that was the calculation that he made. And, so that's why he did not touch that. I mean, I don't think there's any real dancing around that. Of course, the reality is it is a third rail. It is toxic for the very reason that I said, as Black Freud said, right? You admit that you owe the descendants of African slaves $50 trillion. What you admit is that you built this country on unpaid debt that you have no intention of paying back. And there goes all of the mythology about the shining city on the hill and how we are a model system for the world. Because what did we do? We built it using forced labor that we're not intent on, and genocide. And we're not interested in making up for any of those sins, which just makes us a deadbeat country, makes the whole thing fake. All right, the CIA hacked the general, but Dems will cheat him. I don't know what you mean by that.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about there.
Post-duopoly joke. All right, thank you, Zach. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Another $49.99 from the Robert Network. Wow,
damn,
you,
yo,
very generous. We'll round up again. Give you.
Is that you, Elon?
Yeah, is that you, Elon? Globalists control corporations. Corporations control governmental laws. Governmental laws control the citizens of the country in which they live. Elon is a globalist. I guess he's not Elon. He doesn't care about the U.S. He cares about money, influence, and power. Yeah, look, you don't get to be the second richest man in the world unless you care about all of that. And obviously, his history of plundering, South American countries for lithium and things like that. I mean, yeah, no, this is not someone who takes national sovereignty all that seriously. No, I mean we've said that about him from day one.
At the same time, yes, I agree with all that. We have to admit, the possibility of even billionaires having psychological complexity. I don't get the sense that he really doesn't give a shit about the issues that he raises. If he really didn't give a shit, he could have stayed on the very easy road he was on. He created Tesla. The libs loved him.
They loved him. Tesla.
They loved him. He needed this shit like he needed a hole in his head. There's no upside to what he did, putting himself in the Rogan Trump basket with those people. Like, you want to talk about getting favorable legislation out of them. That's not the way to do it. What's going to happen when he needs a favor for Tesla now? So it's complicated with him. I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think you can just dismiss the things that he's done as insincere because there's no real upside in it for him.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's right. That's right. I mean, you could call it an offer that he never intended for Twitter to accept, right? This is why he tried to back out of it. But, the fact that you dipped your toes into this at all when you were the world's richest man, don't forget, he didn't start this as the world's second richest man. He started this as the world's richest man. So, he's lost a lot of money over this. And, however pure or impure his motives, I think it's complicated because
it's complicated.
You can't really say he did this as a power play. I don't think he did it as a power play. He's not gaining real power out of it. Even if he transforms Twitter.
A power play is Bezos buying the Washington Post.
Exactly.
He pulled, that's a Lex Luthor move.
Right. Exactly. Even if he does transform Twitter into something, it's still Twitter, right? It's still, it's still a product. The way you really influence people. Now you say, well, the Washington Post is just the newspaper. So what do you mean? Twitter is more culturally relevant than the Washington Post. Yes, that's true. But the Washington Post buys you political capital with people who make the rules. So even though nobody reads the fucking thing, it's still, that is a way in. Right. The people who are going to write you the legislation you want reading.
That's Washington's hometown paper.
Exactly. So that's why that is more of a power move than whatever the fuck he wants, Nike to be able to sell shoes on his platform. Right. All right, but good point, nonetheless. And we're not just saying that because you put $50 on it. I had a teacher who sang hymns at church with vigor, turned red, was orgasming for sure. Put $5 in the plate. Totally worth it. Yeah. Good one, laugh.
Fair.
Bennett Weiss, it's my dad. Thanks, Dad. Does DueDissidence offer tech support? I got a new computer that asked me to register to join the chat. Too fucking complicated. Do you have an 800 number? I need a guy named Roy from Calcutta to help me out. Well, you apparently figured it out because you wouldn't have been able to do that unless you were able to sign in. So glad you could figure it out. Add this to your coffee fund. Well, thank you. We will do that. We appreciate that very much. All right, folks, I believe that is everything. Good show tonight, really full show tonight. We want to thank you guys all for listening. We want to thank our friend Anis Shivani for coming on. Always great to talk to him.
Yeah, good to
We'll look out for that sequel article that he put out. And see, I hope this episode, I hope that interview made some of you RFK stands happy, because I think we've proved that we're willing to have a conversation, willing to acknowledge some really valid points that Anis brought up. And willing to push back and still be friends. That's what it's all about, right? That's what having a viewpoint diverse show and a viewpoint diverse audience is all about. So
you see that? You see that?
Oh, beautiful.
Because we were talking about this before the show. Which one of us is sexier? So
yeah, we were arguing about that. We
argue about that a lot.
Yeah, we argue about that a lot. John Locke, thanks for the $20, my friend. You guys are very generous with the super chats tonight too, keeping us going, keeping us afloat. So thank you guys all very much.
And look, Zach, if anything, I have done incalculable help for your candidate tonight, because a lot of people will support RFK, at least for polling purposes, just to see me dress as Boy George and sing Karma Chameleon.
That's true.
They're going to want to hit that 45%. Mark.
That's true. They will at least tell a pollster.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm for RFK.
They will at least claim that they're for him for that.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, are people still surprised about my hair? What did it say? What the fucking hair? Yeah, I got my summer haircut. I told you guys I was gonna get it. As soon as I got a minute, I was gonna get it. First on my list when I had some free time, and I got a little bit of free time. Went right over there.
You caught John Locke's super sticker, right?
Yep, I did.
All right.
Oh, my dad just texted me. He said he never figured it out. He says, I never figured it out. I got through on my old computer. Oh, so he's... Oh, okay. All right. So, all right. Well, sorry. I think it's your Gmail password is what it is, right? Don't you need a Gmail account to have a YouTube because it's all Google? So in order to have a YouTube, you need a... So it's whatever your password is for Gmail. I think that's how you sign on. All right, everybody. Well, we want to thank you guys all very much for watching. We will be back here on Tuesday night with the great Norman Finkelstein, 8 p.m. I know you guys have been waiting for that. We have too.
Get started on the book before then.
Get started on that book. That's your homework. That's your reading material. That's your assignment for Tuesday nights. We will be back Tuesday and then back again on Thursday. Please hit that subscribe button on the way out if you have not subscribed. Please hit that like button to help other people find this stream. This stream will be available to watch in its entirety immediately following the program. What are we at? We still at... No, see, we lost one. We were at 9,010. Now we're at 9,009. What's with you fucking people with your touchy bullshit? You know?
Yeah.
You gotta
Nature of the beast.
I hit the unsubscribe button. All right, you know what? All right, everybody. Thank you very much. We appreciate you all. We will see you back here Tuesday at 8 and then Thursday at 8. In the meantime, please go to patreon.com/DueDissidence to support the show. Go to DueDissidence.substack.com where you can stay in touch for free. That is a free email list. You can sign up as a paid subscriber, but you don't have to. You could sign up for free. It just helps you stay in touch. We send out emails whenever we're going to go live. The occasional news article, audio podcast. We put all these live streams up on an audio feed so you can listen in your car. And that's everything. All right. We're good, Russell, correct? No more super chats? Perfect. Beautiful. Yep. Excellent. Yep. All righty, folks. Well, thank you very much. We will see you all back here with Norman Finkelstein Tuesday, May 16th at 8 p.m. Until then, of course, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.